Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Shoutouts to Andreas, Deacon, my boy Scott, Pedro, and everyone else that engages on my posts, etc. Keep it up, man. You'll get there someday. And everyone else from Great Memes.
Look at the kitty. Look at the kitty. Look at it. Look at it. Look at meow. That is adorable. That is. Look at this kitty. Oh, the drone kitty. The kitty. The kitty. Look at all the kitties. Kitties, America. Welcome to America's favorite kitties. That's not the show. Good to see you guys. How is it going?
Well, that's
I
a
thought I'd
really
just
good
try
startup
new
sequence.
things.
Like, it's so ridiculous. I love it. I just love
Yesterday,
it. Like, I can't explain it. I just want to say really quick, like, because I've never said this, but like, it plays every time, and like, it fills me with such joy inside. Like, I just love it. That's all I have to say.
Oh yeah,
Vibe
yeah.
very
Got me.
key.
It gets me wired for sure.
Kurt.
Fucking Kurt.
should
Shout
be
out to
here.
Kurt.
In 1
Yeah,
quarter
Kurt.
mile, arrive at
He was here
Love's Travel
yesterday.
Stop on the left.
He's probably like 2 days in a row. How could you? I was just wondering. I was like, can we make him? Oh, Kurt doesn't have the link. Is that what's going on? That's embarrassing. Did we not
Oh,
send
come
the
on,
link to the
Kurt.
chat?
It's
Bro,
there, but it's like really far up.
Yo,
'cause me
oh,
and, Chris,
oh
look at
my
my
God.
comment. Look
Chris
at my
went
comment.
ham, dude. Yeah,
You
we
have
talked forever.
400. You have 400 comments before we even get. Oh no, but we're crystals are spirits, and you open up. They open for demons. I better use my crystal-powered cell phone to warn everybody.
I love that one.
Do you even crystal
Please drive to
way about that? Don't even activate. They waters so.
Hey guys,
Actually,
I'm gonna stay
my
listening
buddy Eli
to
and I
the
went to
broadcast.
school with
but,
this kid.
Yo, bro, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay listening to the broadcast, but
Yeah, I can
I
hear you.
just finally
And your
came up.
clicker.
I came up on the first truck stop in like 250 miles, so I'm gonna buy myself a sandwich really quick. I'll stay listening, but I'll be right back.
Holy crap. Andrew Vega looks like he's a witness in Kazakhstan for like the journalism press. Good to see you. We had a friend in San Diego who ended up at Carnegie Mellon whose family ran the Voss water bottling racket out of Norway. And so just shout out to Alexander real quick.
God,
'cause I
that,
know
yo,
that-
that
I
bottle,
know that bottle.
by the way, it was a joke gift. All right, like someone bought it because like I was talking about like getting into occult esoteric shit, and then they bought me a spirit crystal water bottle, and they're like, "Oh, look, now you can crystallize your water," and I was like, "Joke's
Bro,
on you! I'm gonna use
crystals are like crystals.
You're kind of breaking up, man.
Oh, I thought that was just my connection because it's trash.
No, it's me too. I think it's because he was just talking about like adding like 100 and something devices on his.
My
on his,
internet. I apologize. My internet doesn't want me to share videos of crystal grifters. I believe in crystals. There's nothing wrong with using crystals. We talked about that, like how this is a magic rock, a scrying mirror with crystals and quartz inside. So I believe in the power of crystals. It's the YouTube grifters you got to be worried about, right? It's the spiritualists that read your astrology. The astrologers.
Yeah. You mean also the ones that do tarot? I have a look. There are a couple of tarot readers on
See,
YouTube.
but bro, I do tarot. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
There are a couple of tarot readers that I really like. Shout out to Magnetize. I think it's Magnetize Yourself or Magnetize Me. I think it's Magnetize Yourself. And yeah, I think it always starts out. It's like, hi, hello, my name is Infinity, and welcome to my channel where we talk about life, love, and of course the law of attraction. And I was like, at first I thought like I was just like going through this shit out of morbid curiosity, and eventually some of them just like really resonated with me, and I was like, yeah, I gotta subscribe to this person. I don't know what it is. It sounds goofy, but I'm about it. You're muted, man.
Okay, I just phoned a friend, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style. So, because we talked about tarot. So earlier on the show, well, go ahead.
Sorry, why does tarot have a silent T?
It doesn't. The T and R and K are the same. They're also apostrophes, right? And so also the main thing is that tarot and Torah are the same word. Like if you were in Hebrew writing the word tarot and Torah and you didn't have your vowels, which you don't unless you buy them, then you end up with Torah and tarot are the same word, but the difference is a few dots which represent wisdom through maybe an inversion, like wisdom through symbolism versus wisdom through numerology, which is like, perhaps what Hebrew itself is trying to be in the Torah.
Which is also related to sacred geometry.
Yeah.
That's good information. I hope we're live because that's really good information.
Jim, we're calling you in to do a tarot reading.
I look like a goddamn Queen album.
You do, bro. I like it. I kind of feel like you're like the Blue Man Group Inside Out right now. That's a great shirt. It's pretty good.
Oh my god, we got a tarot reading. Holy shit.
This is my boy.
I was just doing a tarot.
This is my boy Jim.
Whatever,
Jim's a good man, and he's friends with Raph and I, and he goes way back, and yet we've yet to meet in human form. We seem to be like meta spiritual alchemists, but we're about to do that. Yeah.
All right. So what do you need? And then I got I'm at my girlfriend, so it's like
I'm gonna defer. Yeah, we'll wrap it up. Chris, I'm gonna defer to you or Kurt. Whatever questions you want asked, this is your chance.
No pressure. Well, I'm a Gemini, Sun and Moon, so it's like let's just chill. To make it sound like it's goddamn guillotine's about to drop.
Can you give us some news about the sun? I don't know. Is the sun happy? Is the sun healthy? Is the sun chill?
Like
is
you
the
mean
sun...
solar activity? The sun soul?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's one way to put it.
All right. Is the sun happy?
Is the sun angry at us? Is the sun mad at us?
It's funny that you're saying this because I was just giving a reading to a guy and I was talking about how the Hopi have a prophecy, right? When like the fifth age of the sun is going to change or whatever. Where they're like the spider. I mean, I think it's in Kind of Scotsy is where I read it or somewhere, some movie or some weird shit, Philip Glass kind of thing. I digress. The point is, it's like when you see spider webs in the air in the skies, like Franken skies, it's the end of the age kind of thing. So let me pull a card. I'll stop rambling. Is the sun happy? I've got, look at that. It's the card I actually pulled today. You can't probably see it very well. It's the Six of Pentacles. It looks like
beautiful
the fucking
card.
sun. Yeah, this guy, David DeAngelis, he's cool. He's been on my podcast a few times. He worked with David Bowie. This is the David Bowie Starman tarot deck. It's pretty dope. But basically, I mean, I can read really quickly. This is Pentacles, if you don't know, are like for earth signs that we all have these in us, right? So if you're a Taurus, a Virgo, or a Capricorn, naturally this is your jam. But like I said, we all have this going on. Anyway, hopefully you can see it. Six of Pentacles on page 172. I have more than enough. This is about stepping into the natural flow of abundance, being a custodian of resources and having like a philanthropic look, generously offering life your best and delivering a worthwhile vision. In a weird way, I would say, I'm not going to read the whole card thing because it's lengthy, but basically he was saying he was kind of this creative. He had issues and he's like, fuck it, I'm barely making ends meet and I'm gonna get the axe is gonna come down. He did something out of the joy of his heart. David Bowie saw it in a plane, called him, they made this deck. So to answer your, yeah, the sun is popping. Awesome. It's like this looks solar, but I think it's changing. You know what I mean? I think our relationship to the sun is changing even, and what it means to be a human on this sphere, if you want to go that route, or flat earth, or however you feel. Like whatever the sun is doing is evolving us, and then it gets into like Sirius is like this station, and our sun is a local thing. The sun is cool. The sun is doing its thing, but we've got to. It's like making it rain.
Can't hear you guys all of a sudden. Are you still there?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Long story short, there's a lot of solar color. I mean, this is like solar plexus fucking color, right? Yellow. So I think the sun, it's not that it's happy or mad with us. It's like we're being shifted from fucking elementary school to college or whatever. So it's like, the
You
lessons
should be
aren't the
able to
same.
tell how healthy
I've,
the sun is by how healthy the garden is in the gardener as well.
Interesting. I mean, I've heard New Agers be like, "Oh my God, it's not even the same sun. It's like a different color." This, that, and the other. There's as many.
I buy
fucking
that
theories.
sometimes, dude. The sun does not feel like the sun, does it? Have you ever looked at that thing? You
It's more
shouldn't.
white now. They say, yeah. There's some people who eat the sun right in the morning, at night. I'm like, I don't know, y'all. Like, I don't know about that.
I have a question, if I may. I briefly dabbled in the sphere of tarot. So as far as my beliefs, nice to meet you, by the way. It's I definitely, I'm more than convinced that the universe has some sort of divine frequency, and we're all trying to extract it. I think tarot seeks to tarot and astrology, it seeks to kind of delve into that divine frequency. When it comes to tarot, if we're trying to interpret tarot or talk to people who aren't into it, for example, one thing I thought about is what if I'm trying to manifest an answer, and I just go through a deck and go through 15 different cards, what is the right mindset to try to extract knowledge, in your opinion?
Depends on your chart. I mean, if someone's highly pragmatic, I'm a Sun and Moon Gemini, so I tend to like ideas and thinking through things. If you're a water sign, I mean, it's funny. I'm kind of answering the question with the system, so I don't want to do that. Exactly. Temperament and orientation necessarily dictate how one apprehends the Tao. So a giraffe's reality tunnel is not the same thing as a fruit fly, which is not the same thing as fucking Mount Rushmore. And yet they're all happening, right? So, in a sense, and I don't want to bypass what you're asking, there's no wrong way to do things. It's what appeals to your sense of novelty. Terrence McKenna, one of my heroes, he was all about ride that edge of novelty. I mean, that's where the magic lies. So whatever kind of speaks to you, I think some of these things, like the tarot as we know it, is a Golden Dawn art tool. Largely, it could precede that from Egypt and all this sorts of shit. I don't need to get into that. But basically, what's happening is we're taking our, when I explain what is tarot to people who aren't into it, I'm in a materially reductionistic way, we're taking a comic book, chopping it up, and projecting our psyches onto it, and drawing out the symbol sets and storylines that we need at the moment. Just like if you pick up a fucking Marvel movie, you're I really want to watch Iron Man for some reason or whatever. You see what I mean? You're going to be drawn towards archetypes subconsciously, because most of our reality is driven by what we don't know is happening. It's subconscious, unconscious stuff driving reality largely.
Can I ask a question?
Always, whatever.
All right,
you don't have to be so kind. You can say, dude, what?
Can I ask what the cards have to say about aliens?
I can pull a card on aliens. Sure.
Yeah. In a general sense, no need to get specific. Are the
sure.
Is there a need to get specific? What do you think, Jim?
If I'm holding an alien card, I mean, what the fuck? Well, it's about aliens.
Is specificity?
This is the Gemini card, the lovers. I mean, look, aliens.
Are aliens going to contact me this month?
No, he pulled the lovers card. He pulled the lovers card.
Okay, so look, the lovers card.
That's basically what I got, bro. You're doing aliens all the time. I think we are constantly doing aliens. That's what demonology and possession's all about.
That plays with cultural norms. At some point, it's if you don't fucking join the culture and stay by the fire and kill everybody who's not in your culture, you're not the tribe, and that's very hard to survive. So, I'm sure Abraham's wife would have left if she had fucking upward mobility, but she didn't. Or you see what I'm saying? It's anyway, I'm rambling.
I do.
The point is with aliens, I know Raphael, my co-host, we don't really podcast right now, but Raphael, he's more so into aliens. He was more into Bashar and channeling and aliens in general. I always found it intriguing. I haven't really had any experiences personally, but I know that it depends on your sources, right? It's how much of our DNA is RH negatives. I think Raphael is an RH negative. I'm not, but we get into gaps where so I'll just answer your question. The lovers card is basically it's a yin to the yang. In the Basharian sense, the aliens are our future selves coming back to fuck with us and thank us or whatever.
Hell yeah.
Right?
That's awesome. That's dope.
I'm not sure if I believe that. I mean, belief is a funny thing, but it's not a bad story. At worst, I don't even want to get into it. Worst case, but like it's a necessary composite to the fucking fractal of being.
Yeah. Like what
The
if they're on, like,
cards don't lie,
genetic,
man.
what if they're on a genetic downturn and they need to come back in time?
The
to use
That's the
cards
their
whole
don't
hormones?
lie.
thing.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
whole.
I have
that's the whole great
I have a selfish question,
Oh.
if I may.
thing. Sure, dude.
No, in
I'm
the
not gonna do
past,
it.
I'm
My
not-
girlfriend's like, what are you doing?
I'm a Virgo.
Will my father ever love me?
No.
Virgos, man. I don't.
Wait, I want to hear Kurt's question. I want to hear Kurt's
Although
question.
Venus is in Virgo right now, as Mercury is in retrograde in Virgo, the Moon is in Virgo probably still right now. So it's a very Virgoan moment.
Yeah. In the past, I fell in love with a Leo, and well, I'm
You were
just
probably playing
curious.
second fiddle to that shit. You were probably the hearth that held the flame. And you're like, oh, I love watching the fire. Please keep me warm. And they were like, it's about me, bitch.
Oh shit.
So I don't know. It's not a bad combo, but like, whatever. Virgos are Earth sun. I mean, it depends on your other chart. You could be a Virgo sun and then have like all water shit, like Mercury and Pisces and all sorts of stuff. So it depends on the dynamics of the actual chart, which I would need to look at. But generally,
Because
go ahead.
sorry. So I was just gonna say, because I'm an Aquarius, will people always look at me funny every time I
Yes,
open my mouth?
you're the outsider, bro. I'm an Aquarius Jupiter. It's like you're a mutant. Just accept it. You're a fucking Rick.
That's right.
When-
Rick and Morty.
I think we're like. I think
when
we're
the
like
devil-
a
when the-
conglomeration of everything. I think we're
when the-
like everything combined.
When the devil is busy and he sends Scorpios and Aquarius, right?
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I'll say this about Aquarius really quick. So Aquarius is originally Saturn ruled, but it's a Uranus ruled planet now, which is about like punctuation events, revolution. I look at Aquarius as like Fonzie from Happy Days. Like, he's cool with everybody, but he's coming in on a Harley as a Hell's Angel. He's like, hey, he does his own fucking thing. He dips
Yeah,
with
we're
a chick.
fucking aliens. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to be the outsider, but you're still for the cause.
But we connect. We connect everybody too. Like we're the outsider, but we put everybody together. We're like the puzzle piece they were missing.
Star
They didn't know.
children unite.
You see that? Well, Aquarius, for better
The
or worse,
age of
sees,
Aquarius.
it sees the it's the highest air sign, so it sees the whole schematic. So you see how things should be going. So it can be very alienating when you're like, you guys are.
Well,
idiots.
yeah, we're basically like the sociologists. We always have an outside looking in view of everything, and we step into a room and we can see like this is the social dynamics at play right now, and we're kind of like autistic, but we're not because we're Aquarius. You know, it's like.
Well, the
it's
reason
different.
I said Rick is because Rick is like, he helps people. I mean, and I don't really watch much Rick and Morty. I haven't seen all the seasons or anything. But
I used to love
Rick,
that. I haven't watched it for a while.
You know who he is, right, Rick? It's like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I mean, it's like he's off in the fucking room doing his own shit.
It is.
But he's still part of the crew. Like he's right on the fringe. He's like, fuck this, I'm gonna go do my own thing. But he's like he's still considerate.
That's the thing, because
guess.
like I'm a cuspy, right? Like I'm about a minute.
I'm a cuspy
like,
too.
I'm right. I think all my coolest friends are. No offense to anyone who's not, but
Oh.
I'm right on Pisces Aquarius, and I'm
Makes
like
sense.
the minute.
His Mercury
Nice.
is Aquarius, if I remember correctly.
And I'm Leo rising moon, whatever. I don't know. I shouldn't give all
Yo,
that
all
out because there's
cuspies
too many
are
witches
some-
in the audience.
Did you notice that all
Yeah.
cuspies are like something cool and something mad whack? Like I'm on the cusp of Virgo and Libra. Like Libra's mad cool, but Virgo's like mad fucking whack. And I'm like, oh, well,
Libra's
that's just-
cool. I like Libra girls. I don't know. I mean, I like girls, but like
There's a good
Libra
book
girls are cool too. You know?
called Sextrology. If you ever wanna
Libra
get a
girls are
fucking
always
book.
like Libra girls like that I've met are always like really sexy, really cool. They're really unique, but they're always all over the place, and they cannot focus on any one person at any time. Like they're not somebody.
Yeah,
you can
unless
trust.
unless
Like,
you're
you don't
like
trust,
true.
you don't trust
Unless you're
one,
like
you know?
unless you're like apotheosis all encompassing, which you can be.
right. You have
if
to be
try.
the every person. You have
I'm,
to be the
uh,
every person.
My birthday, I have the same birthday as Yoko Ono, and the same
She
birthday as
sucks
John.
at singing.
I think there's a couple albums there that, Jim, I'm surprised at you. Aren't you the guy who takes more acid than that? You should
I
probably
don't
give
want
her
psychedelics.
give her a second chance.
You've
But
seen her
John-
with Chuck Berry, right?
Oh yeah.
And John
I mean, I
is
thought.
like, what the
I thought
fuck?
it was interesting.
an
Chuck
Aquarius.
Berry's very
Aquarius.
different though, because she's the exact same birthday as me. John Travolta also same
Whoa.
birthday as me.
Yo, I share a birthday with Bruce Springsteen. Holy shit.
Wow,
That's like,
the
yeah,
newest
talk about-
billionaire club. That's
Really?
pretty big. Yeah, he
I
just
share a
became billionaire.
birthday with
He's the fucking
Obama.
man.
He is.
So you're
Oh
a
my
Leo?
god, that's
Literally.
awesome.
But
I'm supposed to be related to Obama on my mom's side. On his white side. He's supposed to be
really,
related to me.
you kind of do, because so like Obama's white side is Dick Cheney's side, and I've always thought you looked a bit like Dick to me. But
He's gonna pull a gun
Yeah,
on
dude,
you
let's
at a
do some
fucking
initiatives.
I feel like if we like
to do some
gave
initiative.
you some white hair and like had you do like a 70s movie where like all the other Republicans were libertarians doing cocaine and having gay sex orgies, and you're like, haha, I got you, I'm square enough to take it over. That's the movie, you know? But
That's me.
I thought, so the thing is, even though I'm clearly alien, Aquarian, like a lot of those
You're an alien.
things, I got that minute into Pisces. So like I can be really, I could watch Old Yeller and cry. You know, like I watch
you're a
Brother
soft soul.
Bear
You
and
make
cry.
poems and
No,
music and stuff.
so it's
you're an
not. I'm not
artist.
fully I'm not fully Aquarian, and I think that's the weird is the Piscean, because the Piscean is like
Well, you're pulling a
so
shocker.
like uncomfortably
You're a cuss.
empathetic.
You know what movie?
Yeah,
what movie
and I'm
makes
like
me
I'm
cry?
like I'm correcting the spine. You know, when I pull this, I'm like
Yeah.
like in the process.
Mortal Kombat style.
You know,
Yo, I kind
you
of
know
been
what movie makes
identifying
me
as
cry
a
for some reason?
what?
You know what movie makes me cry for some reason is
What?
Forrest Gump. Dude, Forrest
Oh,
Gump.
really?
Like, some
Oh
of
my
the
God,
retard
yeah.
movies. Retard movies, they get me, dude. Like, I Am Sam,
Yeah.
I cry like the entire movie. Like, I can't do it.
What about Radio? I bet you love Radio.
I never watched that one, but I probably
Get on
avoided it so I wouldn't cry. You know?
How about it? How about Freddy Got Fingered? Do you feel the same way? Because like that movie
Oh,
gets
fuck
me
yeah,
kind
Freddy.
of that way.
I'm the backwards man, dude. I'm the
Yeah,
backwards
yeah,
man.
bro.
Or
Yeah,
Peanut Butter
that
I can
movie's
go
deep.
backwards as fast as you can.
That's a profound movie. I think people really
Hells
need
It
it.
is.
Yeah.
Hells yeah.
All right.
Yo.
Well, hopefully I answered your questions and all. I'm gonna dip.
Travel
Have a-
a
Thank you so
Very
much,
pretty.
Jim. We love you,
have a
Jim.
Thank you so much,
wonderful-
Thank you
Jim.
for
Thank you.
having
It was
us.
so great meeting you, man.
God bless
Thank
you.
you for the reading.
Adios.
Good night. Yo, Jack, Jack, I have a question for
Where's
you.
your
Jack,
LeBaron,
Jack,
Freddy?
Jack. Colin,
Freddy,
Colin,
where's your
Colin,
LeBaron?
Colin.
Yeah, go
Colin.
ahead.
Yo, did you ever feel like a Lemurian or Atlantean star child?
Yeah, I was actually telling Chris about that. You coy devil. It's a long story, but I was talking to him on a podcast last week, and I had a flashback to being like 10 years old. And the first time I ever heard the story of Atlantis, I felt like I had been there, and it freaked me the fuck out. I'm like, I didn't know how to I wasn't into any sort of like new agey shit or anything like that. Like, but the first time I heard about Atlantis, dude, it was like it was familiar. I wanted to cry. Like, it was very strange. So to answer your question, I think so. I don't
Nice. Nice. I feel like one of those animal kin. Like I feel like I'm roachkin. You know, like, I'm like cockroach deep inside, and I reincarnated as a human because I was like the best fucking roach that existed in the 80s. And then I got birthed in the early 90s as a reward for being a sick fucking roach. So yeah, I'm roachkin.
Ian Crossland is all about Atlantis. He's got like major vivid thoughts about Atlantis. He wants to do.
Oh,
he's
man.
like for years wanted to do like a screenplay or a movie about Atlantis. This idea of
I
there
would
being
love that.
basically, I mean, a dystopic falling apart Atlantis is also interesting, right? Like you've got this
Yeah.
society that's kind of neglected because it's so well automated and efficient that it's allowed to get to a point where it could literally destroy itself like that. I mean, that's not
That's
hard
one way
to
to look
imagine.
at it for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, because we could remember like the earlier parts of Atlantis, and Atlantis is supposed to be like utopian and perfect, but
Apparently
there is
there's
a
some-
point where it ends. You know,
There's some shit in Egypt
Yeah,
apparently
it
that was
did
left
end.
over from that time, like the pyramids of Giza. Supposedly,
Mauritania. You've seen like the Mauritania Atlantis. There's this big circle that Jimmy
Yeah.
Cossetti calls, Atlantis, the Ricat structure, right? And there's pretty decent evidence that there was something here, and there's this extreme megalithic structure that is in a ring system, exactly the same proportions that Atlantis are described, right? So the idea that Atlantis was a circle, that everything was equally accessible, that there was water flowing, there was hydroelectric power, this whole place was...
well, the
That was based,
theoretical.
whoever did that.
Yeah, that was so funny, Andrew. We heard
intense.
all of
Sorry.
that. But anyway, the funny thing would be like, if they tapped into the same kind of
Like it worked. Like they don't always work.
wireless energy that Nikola Tesla theorized and tried to put forth in front of us. He built
Right.
those Warden Cliff Towers that is supposed to like connect to other ward and cliff towers across the world, and supposedly they're connected along the Earth's natural electromagnetic grid in the atmosphere or some shit. I don't really know.
Yeah, exactly.
About this,
Ley
but-
lines and quartz structures. So the idea that all this material has gold and quartz already in it, and if you erect mounds, and those mounds are similar enough to the antennae cellular systems that we use today, then
Yeah.
you can transmit energy, right? The energy will go from one to another through an array. And though you can't control it as well as you can with 5G unidirectionally, it would naturally find its own equilibrium, right?
Even
You'd
with
find
5G, yeah. Like that's
you'd
real
find a
shit.
stasis
That's not
frequency.
spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah, just the Earth itself is creating enough ionic and interfering with enough ionic frequency and microwave radiation and resonance, like Schumann resonance, extremely low frequency and very low frequency resonance, that you're producing enough energy that there are entropic osmosis of frequency flow that you'll find naturally.
How do we
if
tap
you
it though?
Well, this is the way, because these structures made out of dirt, well, the dirt has in it quartz, and it's allowed to grow for a long, if you have it for 20 to 100 years, quartz crystal becomes solidified in such a strong way, the entire structure becomes a resonant antenna. So you have aerial antennas that are natural, right?
So is that the
And
point of like an obelisk or something?
Yeah, and pyramids, right? Like major, like there's probably a number of other uses for them, but having systems of societies along river and lake systems that connect with each other and can actually aim above the city a tower from one tower to another tower. That's the reason for it, right? So you have bouncing a frequency.
I heard that
And
they
they-
use like underwater rivers and aquifers and stuff. Like all of these structures are supposed to be built on underground rivers and stuff.
So like
Or
the
built
Great Pyramids,
into
the pyramids of Giza. Giza's on top of natural geysers. Teklakhan, like a number of the the Mexican American pyramids, Mesoamerican pyramids are on top of geysers. There are geysers under the Hopewell Mounds. The Hopewell Mounds are near natural hot springs, and there are arsenic springs in New Mexico, where near the Anasazi disappeared city as well. So for a lot of these places, also you could say Lake Titicaca, which is supposed to be a chakra point. Yeah, it's a good name. In Bolivia, Lake Titicaca has major geysers and it's like the largest lake in South America, right? So
And if they have sound technology, they could use water as a medium to transmit energy and information
Cymatics.
as well. Yeah.
Right.
Did you see that thing about how sperm whales can use sonar as an attack method or whatever?
what?
Like,
Yeah.
you know how dolphins can do the clicky thing? I guess sperm whales, because they have that big bulbous front of their face, their clicks are so powerful that they can like stun prey essentially.
Can they like click somebody's ears off?
I know that there was like a diver who almost got seriously injured swimming with sperm whales because it did its like sonar attack thing.
So they can literally do
Like a
sonar
tech, yeah.
jam. They do frequency jamming by doing rapid clicking. Wow.
So they're Russians. They're KGB.
That's crazy. That's pretty impressive that whales figured that out. They're like, wow, I can jam all the frequencies just by going.
Well, supposedly now, I mean,
They sound like
Sorry, my
KGB,
connection's
dude.
trash.
we're trying to figure out ways to like emit
too.
like certain sound frequencies that can make super heavy objects lighter, right? I mean, I don't know if anyone's actually trying to do that, but if I could imagine
Coral
that
Castle,
someone's
bro. That guy had to have.
Yeah, you know about Coral Castle, right, Chris?
No,
Yeah.
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Coral Castle's the one in Florida where a guy who's like a 5 foot tall Estonian man cuts out perfect coral rocks, not just perfect squares, but also unique shapes. Some of the stones twice as large as the largest pyramid.
Wait, how old
at
is
the stone of the pyramid. This is made in like 1915, right? Let me just check that.
And he wouldn't let anybody see what he's doing.
1923. So yeah, he wouldn't let anyone see what he's doing. Correct. He purchased the land from Reuben Moser, who assisted him. He rode around on a bicycle without any rubber tires on the metal with a clothing hanger in his hand, well witching and dousing. He came across some property in Florida and he said, "This is it." He cut out stones. He built this amazing castle. No one knows how this little man was able to lift these giant stones, which some of them are, again, twice as heavy as the largest stone in the Pyramid of Giza.
Do you know about the castle in Colorado? It was like similar thing. Some guy just like built the castle himself. If you do a I know from the picture that's the one.
So do you think
Yeah,
they use like sound manipulating technology or something to be able to do this?
No, some guy
or-
built that himself. I'm saying it's like tangential. So sorry if it's.
Oh, okay.
But
No, this is tangential, but it's still pretty cool. I will definitely look into it.
I would
Although
live in that.
this is I would live in it. It looks like an Earth ship, and it's made out of small mosaic of stone. Well, it's beautiful, but you have to. The stones there are all stones that I could lift. Any one of us could lift one of these stones, and thousands of these stones put together takes a lot of time. And it's very impressive. Don't get me wrong. It's just the difference is that Coral Castle is made out of these crazy stones that they try using lasers and water and crystal diamond to cut quartz and to cut sand to coral stone, and it shatters. Right? It's impossible to cut as straight as he was able to cut, even with today's technology. It's hard for them to recreate, and they found that when they've tried to fix it or to interfere with it, they destroy it. They make it look way worse than it did originally. Like from the earlier pictures, Coral Castle was basically this perfect place. This little hubcap underneath. That's brutal. Where's that coming from? Oh yeah, I'm gonna mute you for a second, Jack, just because it's loud. This stone, there's a hubcap underneath here, and it spins around in a circle, and you can just with a little girl's pinky push it, and it spins. But then they wanted to install this like ticket booth thing here, and they broke it, and like they tried to fix it again. They tried to like move it out. They couldn't fit it back in, so they had to cut some of the stone to fit it back in. Like all kinds of crazy stuff has gone on. Look at his obelisk and everything else. And so yeah, the idea that he used electromagnetism, because he said, well, I know how the Egyptians moved the pyramids, and he had a little book talking about like his sweet Jenny, who and Jenny's sweet 16, this virgin Jenny. And it's a super creepy book. But if you read it and you realize, okay, well, the government's after him, a bunch of people are trying to kill him and take his information. He comes from Eastern Europe and understands how Nikola Tesla does things. Jenny is not Jennifer, it's Generator. And Sweet 16 is that, the Virgin Sweet 16 is the Virgin magnets. And so there's 8 polar magnets positive and 8 polar magnets feminine. And so that's positive and negative. And they have Sweet 16 to make a perfect electric motor. And this would have been something that was probably secret for hundreds of years, but that people in Eastern European countries knew about and actually used for certain things, but only in specific esoteric fraternal apprenticeships, right? But he brought it over, and all of a sudden this one started being
are you
discussed.
saying this was like common knowledge to where he came from? Is that
It was a
where did he
cult.
get this
It was hidden.
information?
Occult knowledge. So not necessarily common knowledge, but not necessarily unknown. Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't
a small group of people know.
And they say the Earth resonates at 8 hertz or something, right? That's why
The Schumann resonance fluctuates.
Well, why do we think that they want to keep this secret anyways? Like, what's the deal? You know what I mean?
But
Like,
8
it's
is
so
pretty
dangerous.
common.
Well, it's like we talk about this all the time, Jack. We're always like, if first of all, if everyone was like savvy to it, that would be utter chaos. Because if everyone truly internalized like insight and wisdom and knowledge of frequencies, they could apply that to their own lives, which is literally the amalgamation of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And like once you truly master your patterns, it's like, what aren't you capable of? At that point, you could do whatever the fuck you
think
want, essentially.
People would
Because,
be,
like-
yeah. Do you think people would be like walking atomic bombs or something? Like, what's the deal?
Well, no. I mean, think about what everyone. I'm not saying like it would be like that for any. It wouldn't make a difference if it was like one individual or a group of individuals. But say like everyone in the world could suddenly like control whether or not they're happy or sad using just their thoughts, like whenever they want. Like that could potentially create like a really chaotic world. So I could see why there would be a reason to put us in like a thought matrix in the first place. You know, like a
So do you think-
materialist.
You think
Think
these
about-
like
think
Coral
about-
Castle
think-
secrets?
Think about Maria Orsich, right? So if you think about the Germans in the 1890s and Maria Orsich, you can just, God, look at her. She was a medium who worked
Isn't she
with,
the Braille bitch?
she's the Vril witch with a capital B. And she
Which, yeah.
was super awesome. Half Croatian, half Austrian, all woman. She worked really tirelessly to channel all of these Hyperborean, Palladian spirits, and the major information that they got were things like the vacuum, right? Which we use for a lot of other things, don't get me wrong. But the vacuum, one of the major things that everyone knows about when we think of the vacuum is vacuuming your home, which replaced the broom, which replaced servants, and women who were being, by gender forced often in Europe, and not only in Europe, across Eurasia, to sweep, right? So amazing technologies that interrupted everything. Now, what happened after that? Well, you have the women's rights and freedom to vote, and eventually women's suffragettes work on to taxation of equal, the entire family, and we end up in an economic crisis, all because we were, but also destiny, because women are now allowed to seek out other things in their day besides cleaning up a house. I mean, these are the first things I think that were given by these medians. Like almost every single thing is a practical thing at first. A water wheel, an electric heater. These are all things that are very useful for military as well, but they're household appliances first that we think of.
It sounds a lot like what would happen if you just unleashed a bunch of new technologies today that like are being suppressed.
Well,
That it would break a lot of the economy, right?
all right.
I
So
don't
we
know
could
about it would force people to, like, right now you have a preoccupation that keeps people from escaping their hierarchy of needs. So they work all day. It's kind of like a heroin addict. Most wage cucks are heroin addicts in a sense. They have to get this battery fill, and to do it, they have to charge up by working a job they don't want to do, right? And that whole system, it doesn't need to exist. It's the same thing. Instead of sweeping all day, there could be a robot that goes back and forth that loves to eat trash, right? And it has a solar panel on it. And when that happens, what will you do with your day? And it's not that you won't do anything, right? And the idea that you might go around and break windows and, is a thing. It's a thing. People, think about the 50s. There were just these kids that went around breaking windows. There was nothing to steal, Think about it. That could happen very easily again, and they're careful about it.
Hey guys, let's go break some windows. We're real badasses. That was
Teenagers.
It's basically
Ironically,
like,
not.
I mean, you could see traces of this in a lot of cultures. Like, it's basically a cautionary tale when you think, what if everyone was like Dionysus, or however you pronounce it? Like, that would be a fucked up world, Like,
I've been
mean if we were all
unemployed for a
Ubermensch?
month, and while parts of it are awesome, the only thing I say, I do get a little bit of cabin fever, but like I just want somewhere to go every day. It's not about
Why aren't you
getting
at
paid
why aren't you at a
necessarily, but-
Mennonite church? Like, you could easily find a New Order Mennonite girl and you have 13 kids, Kurt. Look at your eyes.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I were going that far, maybe I'd check out the Mormons, but I know you'd be a fan of that. But I was like, as far as the whole wage thing, right now, I think the biggest problem, well, there's two problems. One problem is the atomization of society, and how would we find our sense of community if we just removed work? Even though work doesn't really fulfill that, it's really a half measure. But that's one, like, rebuilding that sense of community. And right now, if they replaced everyone's jobs with robots, they wouldn't fucking pay anyone. They were like, well, fuck you, starve. That's just kind of like the predominating attitude, whether people want to accept it or not. Like, the owner class doesn't really give a fuck. And that is the biggest problem, is like, well, what their thought is what can we do so that people won't revolt in that sort of scenario? If they don't think people will revolt, everyone's just fucked. I think that's the reality that we're all
That's
facing.
like always what they're concerned about, is whether so they'll push you just far enough to not revolt, then they'll push you just far enough to. But they also are very concerned with like social cohesion and a lack of chaos, right? So I wonder sometimes to myself, like, are these people really evil, or are they just doing shit we don't understand for reasons we don't? Like,
Well, dude, the devil has to think they're more righteous than God. That's the whole point of the devil, right? They have to think they know better.
yes, they're
Yeah, I
fighting
guess
for
so,
social
right?
justice. They must be fighting. The devil must be fighting for social justice, or any kind of justice.
Yeah, they
Like-
wear white.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to consider themselves evil, really. least not people that are doing evil shit. Not necessarily that they are evil, but they don't want to, you know, like, of course I'm the good guy. You know what I mean?
Well,
I'm trying to control people's lives, so I'm the good guy. Like,
all right, so I have a solution to all this big problem where if everyone's capable of doing magic in the world, like how would we like figure how to properly navigate this? And I think like if I recall correctly, like the traditional way to do it was as a young initiate, you become adept or you get initiated and you become a journeyman or a journey person, I guess. And then you around the world there will be different lodges, and each lodge would have their own technology, their own knowledge, their own traditions, their own practices. And you go from lodge to lodge. You know, you spend time at one lodge, you exchange knowledge, because as you travel from one lodge, learning different techniques, different practices, different things, different ways to manifest, different ways to manipulate stuff that you have access to, like the sounds you emit, the vibrations you emit. You know, like if you could manipulate that to such an extent where you could actually bend reality in seemingly supernatural ways, I think like that's how it could be done in a semi-orderly fashion in a chaotic field, right? Because magic is chaotic. I would think so. I don't know shit about magic because it's pretty. They don't teach this stuff in school, you know. Like I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't.
I mean,
say
they do to an extent. Like so, you like so. Did you remember in your Korean? Like, do you remember like levers and pulleys?
Yeah.
In class ever in science class? Okay. So like give me a lever long enough and I can lift the moon, I think Archimedes said, right? That's a science, and that science is a form of magic because it is an occult. I think this is the best. Now we might have a quicker occulted knowledge might be the best definition for magic. Because, you know, any technology that is indistinguishable from any technology that is sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. This is Arthur C. Clarke. So I think it's true to say that any occulted knowledge, any occulted capacity that someone else does not have, that is considered magic. So it's not even that occult of a term anymore, or that esoteric, or that sexy, evocative of a term to say magic, because you might say, you know, the magic inside Intel, the magic Apple formula.
Mathematics I think is a form of magic too. You know,
of course,
if you
right,
it
but
depends
not
on how you
Not everybody agrees on algorithms. So like having your own secret algorithm is kind of like having your own secret spell right now with AI.
Yeah, it's like calculus with stocks, you know, or finance.
I definitely agree that. So like people, the way they think of magic and stuff like that, like even when it comes to telekinesis or all of those things, is that like if they are possible, that doesn't mean it's magic. It just means it's science that we don't comprehend yet. We don't have like a way to explain how it occurs in the world, but that doesn't mean that there isn't mechanics behind it that makes sense once it's laid out, right?
But let's close up on the hammer and sickle, as I say, that the future is already here. It's just not been equally distributed yet. So it's
a Hitachi wand, actually.
Oh, you got me.
Oh my god, yo, that's so sick. Holy shit.
Bro, you got me.
Hell yeah, dude. That's pretty cool.
Sorry, my connection is trash right now.
No, it's all right. I'm glad that it froze on the symbol. Basically, yeah, technology, magic. So if you have a technology that someone else doesn't have access to, and people, this is the way it works right now. It's not that it's unknown. It's just you don't know how it works yet, or maybe you'll never know how it works, right? Like it's an industry secret. It's the company's secret sauce. So magic has become Disney magic, right? Like Disney magic is amazing because it's almost as powerful as an idea of like American Satanism. American Satanism shows you vegetarians that are taking care of dogs, you know, and they're environmentalists. Disney shows you a magic that you don't get burned at the stake for, but your family shows up for, right? So there's a reason why you start to distribute magic more. And we do have warlocks. So open source is warlock, because the idea of a warlock is to betray the secrets of a coven. So all of a sudden, when you start to release open source software, you're, you know, showing ways to do these spells, right?
Well, that's good. I like that. You know, I like turning it from occult to what's the opposite of occult? I guess visible, like not
transparent.
Hidden.
Yeah,
transparent.
I don't know. Let's do a antonym.
But you know, I guess what that really
Well,
just did was like that just
esoteric
exposed.
and exoteric. So I don't know what the opposite of cult is.
I guess I
Sorry.
just exposed, like, yeah, I really would rather give
Exposed.
everyone, I'd rather give everyone the gun, you know, like, I'd rather give everyone the magical gun. I mean, I'm sure, like, I don't think, like, everyone is gonna willingly accept it until, like, they actually understand, like, it's not, like, you know, casting spells and doing shit. It's, like, just really bending reality to your will. And that's totally possible
But-
when you understand what you're actually in control of, which is yourself.
Well,
you know,
what is
like-
casting a spell? So, like,
Right.
I think, sorry, it's honestly like really helpful sometimes if I'm just like going around my house trying to get through my day. I'm just like, all right, what do I do to make my life a little better? I need to clean this shit. So what do? I mix up a few different things. I mix up a little bit of energy with movement, maybe put us on some music, and boom, my place is clean.
Bibbidi
Because, I mean,
bobbidi
I
boop, you
did
could
it,
have said.
but I did. I could have said bibbidi bobbidi boop. But what I'm saying is, like, spells are nothing more than resources at your disposal. And so, like, getting advanced, becoming an advanced magician, theoretically, it's all about knowing the previously unknown solutions to your problems and how you can work them in ways that people can't even fathom. And
Right.
so,
Like, if I have
there
an
are many
algorithm-
levels to life.
Let's say I have an algorithm that's set up with a Raspberry Pi and a microphone that's connected to my phone in another room, or however it works, and I've set it up to do all sorts of things like sell and trade Bitcoin and run shows and automate my life, and all I have to do is use my voice to say it. And so all you see is me like standing there, and probably at this point I'm pretty cocky if I can do all that. I'm wearing like a wizard's hat, you know, I would think. And I say Presto Digitonium, and Presto Digitonium is like starts all of the algorithms off on the techno system. So we're not seeing all of the steps that went into it. But when people say, oh, a magic spell is just like a kid playing, saying la 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 la, that's not what that means. A magic spell is, you know, in a 13th century book from an 8th century Persian alchemist showing you the order of operations for adding certain chemicals and minerals in order to produce vaporous gases or composite materials, right? That eventually, this is how we made the MOSFET semiconductor, by melting down and creating silicon wafers out of sand. So that to me seems like what we mean when we say a magic spell. It's the Persian understanding, not like the kids playing, right? And this is the problem. People are like, oh, it's just, when people say magic, they mean it's so easy to get something done, but not understanding all the work that goes into it behind the craft.
So it sounds a lot like alchemy. I mean, no matter what, like when I got into all this stuff, like different people get into it through very different avenues. Some people get into it through crystals, tarot. I mean, I don't knock any of it because I don't consider it's just, for me, it was alchemy. It was like Hermeticism. It was like getting introduced to the Kabbalion. It was like learning about Hermes, the thrice great Hermes Trismegistus. And when I got into this, I felt I don't know why it emotionally resonated with me, because none of that shit was emotional. Like the way it was written, it seemed purely objective. It seemed purely focused on like the patterns and the laws and principles of like a mental universe, a thought-based universe where everything has polarity, everything's constantly moving, everything's constantly changing. Everything is in like connection with each other because everything is one, you know, essentially. And using that and applying that to your personal experience, and like how like your personal experience, I mean, I don't mean to be reductive about it because it's infinitely complex, but there is, you know, how you think, feel, and act, you know, like mind, body, and soul. And that's why I always like, I guess at this point you could say I preach it, but yeah, like I do believe alignment, like self-alignment, is key to a better life experience. I mean, I don't even want to be like, I don't even want to go past that, you know, and like discuss morality.
No, but I do, because let's harp on how much of a freak that makes you, you know.
I guess, yeah, maybe.
Let's disassociate a second by focusing on millionaires. But Asmongold, he did a reaction video at some point on the Wellness Festival, if you remember, for millionaires. It's this weird, creepy event where like millionaires get together. Like they're really lonely people, but they own like a laundromat, or their parents have a lot of money.
Shit.
And this is their chance of having a social connection with all this weird like monarch butterfly programming, and like I'm like successful, and lots of fedora hats and everything like that. crystals, and they pay people to do these like yoga things.
But it's
And if you're not,
unsustainable.
well, if you're, well, again, it doesn't really matter, you know, because like
I think
it doesn't have to
if
be.
you're
If you think about the greater span of billions and billions of people living for hundreds and hundreds of years, 24-year-old Tammy here isn't gonna have, you know what I mean? It's not really gonna matter for her what's sustainable. But what she has right now is interesting, because she has this thing that we're all talking about, which is emergent potential. She has this, you know, many piles of fortune, almost a fast pass, if you will, to Disney World, where she can go anywhere with this little card. It lets her go through any of the monorail tracks. And she has only worries that she invents for herself.
Okay.
Right?
I mean,
you buy a house, you don't like it, you get another house, you don't like that house, you change the room is a mess, you just burn it down. Like you have to understand emergent potential. And so what they do then is they say, I know you do. And so what they
No,
do
I'm
then
listening.
is they give them like Reiki and yoga retreats and things like that. That
Sounds
like
nice.
if I were a Mennonite, if I were an Amish Anabaptist in like 1680 and I saw these freaks like having a good time, just like putting mud on their faces, I would burn them at the stake in the 1600s. Wouldn't you?
shit.
Wouldn't you think about it? Because
If I was them,
there's such,
yeah,
because
I
it's
guess.
witchcraft. You're like,
what they
these
did.
people are crazy. These people, they have these weird rituals where they just scream, like they just because they're trying to get out their emotions, right? Because they
Emotions,
don't
yeah.
have
They
anyone to
demonize.
scream at about like the bills.
You know what? I think that what this really focuses a light on, it focuses I guess attention on, is ironically what it is I think that's really what the internet and YouTube and content consumption is really about, is learning how important your attention is. Like your attention, your focused attention, even like your attention watching right now, like that's a form of energy. That is almost like a fundamental element for all creation. Everything you could possibly think of creating, making for yourself, whether it's money, a relationship, a really good fucking life, whatever the fuck you want, like whether it's a new car, a new house, it fundamentally starts with how you direct your attention energy, which is a form of energy. Now, if I was a company intent on making money, I would have to hijack your attention and bring it to me where I'm selling you some shit. So you give me your money. It's basically converting your attention energy, your chi, your will, whatever, into money that I can put in my pocket. And that's like, they're trying to make it so it's
Buy
like
American
a few
Time
clicks
Machines,
away.
new album out now this summer.
This
Yeah,
this might be a really
that's
strange
about it.
idea, but I was thinking about Europa earlier. I was watching Xirtus, right, and they were talking about Edward Bernays. There's this thing he said. They were reading quotes of like, it was something about the propagandists. They're this secret class of people, and that you know, like fill in the blanks for me really quick. What was he saying?
Which was the part? Which part about Anton? Edward Bernays? Which about?
Yeah, he was saying that like propagandists are like a secret class, whatever, and like they take your attention or something like that. And it was saying something about people not even being aware about it, and it got me thinking about something weird.
Well, so like at the time you have a completely separate class of people that are in history. There's always famous people, nobility, intelligentsia. Famous people are almost always prostitutes, right? And they lose their rights to freedom of their own personal freedom because they become property of the state. So beyond the infamia, which is what the Romans called that, there are the people that are discreet because they maintain the rights to their own privacy, right? And so at that class level, you have an intelligentsia. Yeah. The intelligentsia used to be the priest class, but because we've moved beyond the priest class to a secular state, you have the intellectual intelligentsia, which is a different kind of intelligentsia which emerged. Although almost all of the intelligentsia comes from Jesuits or rabbis, or you could even look at Confucius Chinese. Like there's like the priestcraft ends up in the intelligentsia no matter what. And so at that point, then you have a group of people that have access to intelligence and information that no one else has access to. So about 100 years before we had the internet, they had basically the internet where they're talking to people in the Alamo while it's happening, sending you a pantelegraph image of what's going on. They have basically a fax machine called the pantelegraph machine. So They know what's going on in St. Petersburg, the Alamo, London, all at the same time. And they're saying, well, we clearly, objectively, there is no question. And I agree with them. They know more than anyone else knows at that time. So what they do is they create what they call information, or the
They're
Latin
like the
word
first
is
knowers.
propaganda. And propaganda is distributed
knowers.
knowledge. The knowers are then giving this propaganda, distributed knowledge, to the different states. And at that point, propaganda is accepted as this. This is normal. No one questions this. Until the 40s, 30s and 40s, when the United States, all of a sudden, we're intercepting messages. We're intercepting messages from like other countries. And Ezra Pound, an American poet who's working for the fascist Italians and doing radio programs that the Armored Corps is hearing and the Armored Signals is receiving, we have to explain it. Then we say, well, that's not true information. That's just propaganda, right? And all that means is, information. But we're saying, well, because it's foreign information, it's false information. And it's false information with the intent of misinforming you. That's a completely new definition, kind of the way conspiracy theory was recreated in 1968, by the CIA.
Okay, so I had a really weird idea when I was hearing that, though, and that's all really interesting stuff for sure. Thank you. The weird idea I had is there's just something weird about the way that he phrased it. It made me think, like, what if, and it's probably not what he was saying, but what if the intelligentsia is people that are unaware that they are the intelligentsia? What if they're sucking ideas out of like random people and distributing that to the masses? Like they're using, like these people are not aware, like they may be like the masterminds of the world and not know. Like,
So
and that's why their
Nielsen
conspiracy
rating
theories
boxes, right?
always come true. Like, think about it. People's conspiracy theories come true. Like, what if the source of that was they were like, that was a good idea, and then they used that.
Yeah, that makes
and
me
so
that makes me
somebody
think
could
of
be
Ender's
like,
Game.
yeah, exactly. So somebody could be actually like their own worst enemy if they're like, oh no, these evil elites out there are gonna do this, and they're like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, thank you. Like, we will do that now. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just a weird idea I had. That's all I got.
That's kind of what we're talking about, the executive action movie, right, with JFK and Lee Harvey Oswald, and the idea that having patsies is for that. So you have Nielsen box ratings, and you see what people like. But at this point, recording everyone all the time. Education is for this purpose. Have
you ever watched Netflix and then 6 months later they like come up with a show based on something you were thinking about? Like, have you ever had that experience? Like, it's kind of weird.
I mean, I see movies like that, but not really. I don't really Netflix super hard, but yeah, kind of. But yeah, I
like
think in general
like that,
that's
where
what
it's
they're doing.
like.
I've had a weirder
to
experience in that, where an American Dad episode was literally based on an experience I had with a friend of mine, because his son,
That's a good show. I love that show,
bro. So that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, it's not like I'm saying I'm the originator of the ideas that Netflix got and then made it to a show.
No,
I'm saying that they were around in the ether and they picked it up off of people and they made it into a show. They were like, oh, that was a great idea.
Commenting and reacting on it. Yeah, enough people comment and react on it, and they end up realizing that idea. I think so, to an extent. I think also, though, there's like predictive programming, because they know how to antagonize a lot of responses. So they study people like, okay, well, this is a group of people, and we've been for 50, 60, 70 years doing television studies in this town and that town. And we know basically at one point, everyone in this town was this way. We know how people are, and we have psychoanalysis of this kind of person. And so they bring in basically a criminologist, psychologist, and they say, okay, well, this person's really going to, as soon as they see this, it's going to remind them of this symbolism and that symbolism, and so they're going to react this way. So what we recommend is you either mitigate that with this other symbolism, or you use this symbolism instead, if you want these reactions from these sorts of people.
Right, they can see what kind of dominoes. They can see what kind of dominoes are going to fall based on the people that they're targeting. They're like, oh, that's a bad idea. We don't want to do that necessarily. That's going to get the wrong reaction.
Because it's like chemistry. So you say, okay, this family you've got a man who's working in the steel, or like let's say he's working in the swine slaughterhouse, okay? And the wife, she's a teacher. She works at the library, okay? And there's 2 sons and a daughter. Like this is an American family in the 70s. I don't know. And the guy who's working at the slaughterhouse, he's going to be a bit more conservative. The woman who's working at the library, she's going to have suffragette books at her disposal. We'll make sure that Rockefeller stuff keeps her kind of blue. And the kids will be influenced all different directions as well because of the media. The boys will be watching shows about the military. The daughter will be learning shows about hypersexualization or how to be a homestead wife or etc. And they put this all together so that when any particular reaction, a politician gives you a soundbite, which is a single sentence, it causes different chemical reactions, different chain social reactions between that family and other families at the same time. And they can predict pretty well that enough families and enough this reaction will happen where this argument will take place because of the conversation of this show, that show, and the other show that the daughter watched. And I mean, that's
right. Like the Handmaid's Tale is based
Right.
Star
that.
Trek.
Like, that was, yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't, and just to understand, like they like so Turner will have 30 at the time would have like 13 channels, right? Because they have Cartoon Network and they have Turner Classic Movie. They have everything in between. So at the point that you're on CNN, so at the point that the CNN is broadcasting out, your grandfather saw the Turner Classic Movie. Your kids saw the Cartoon Network. And they're all ready to interact based on whatever the
Yo,
whatever
Andreas,
the
can
reaction.
I ask you something?
That reminds me of the Joker and the Batman, all the different ingredients, and you put them together and it kills them.
Chemistry is like chemistry and football. So football also is based on chemistry. When you think of football plays are chemistry, right? They're like this will happen and that reaction will happen.
Right, that'll lead to this, to this, to this. That'll probably fool them this way, and if
Oh,
that
that's pretty
fools them
dope.
this way, you can go that way.
Yo,
Yeah.
Is Star Trek satanic?
Yes.
No,
But like that sounds weird when you say it that way. So what that
I don't
means
think so.
Yes.
what that means my answer to that is because Gene Roddenberry was a friend of Anton LaVey. He wasn't, I think he gave some money but wasn't technically a member of the Church of Satan, but was really fascinated by the Church of Satan, was also friends with Sammy Davis Jr., who also
Because he was so into channeling and stuff, right?
right.
Oh yeah. That's
And
right.
so the first script for the first episode of Star Trek is about Christopher Pike, who's kind of like an Albert Pike Freemasonic reference, Captain Pike,
Hell yeah.
And Captain Pike is in space on a ship with, instead of a priest or a grand vizier, as you'd have for your number one, a Jesuit often, here you have this Anton LaVey character. And in the first script, he's described as Anton LaVey. He's described as a devilish character with these eyebrows, and
It just
that's
sounds
one of
like
the
more
main.
Star Child shit.
I think the main thing was that for him, Satanism isn't okay. So what I should have said is it's not satanic in the way that you think, because it's not about
Yeah.
Baphomet or Satan. It's
It's
satanic
not like
in the
straight
way
Satan from hell. It's something else.
it's
Is that what you're
actually
saying?
like
It's just
it's actually
blasphemous.
like it's Anton LaVeyan logic ethics. So if you took like community college 101 ethics course, that's basically Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. Church of Satan isn't really is about like sacrificing anybody. It's about protecting life and being a good person and what their idea of ethics are and who's in charge in your own home. And, there's all these things that are kind of, it's not what you'd think, right? That's the kind of Satanism that Star Trek's about. And the idea of having, instead of a priest, having a secular wise man, they're saying today's secular wise man would really be a Satanist. But if we removed all the Judeo-Christian symbolism, we wouldn't have a problem with that. Today we have all this crazy, you look at a clown and you start screaming, right? But a clown should be funny. That's the idea. And so all of the Satanists at the time, they were trying to move towards this Enlightenment, New Age philosophy where the ethics of do what thou wilt weren't looked at as like evil, or like, the other thing was like do what is right and don't do what is wrong is good, right? Instead, that this is just the new philosophy that emerges, right? And so you've got the Temple of Set, which Michael Aquino, also a friend of Gene Roddenberry, Anton LaVey, and Sammy Davis Jr., created the Temple of Set, which is a Egyptian
Yeah, I remember.
facade instead of it being
I
like,
watched Gods of Egypt. For all you listening, you should be watching Gods of Egypt if you haven't already.
right.
Maybe
It's a good movie.
at its core, that's what Satanism's about, like LaVey and Satanism. But LaVey got up to some weird shit, so I've heard. You know, like
The
he
god
was,
of the
he was a
underworld,
pretty
baby.
dark guy.
You can watch the most recent documentary on the Temple of Satan, which is a completely different organization, and you can kind of get a picture of how quickly this goes. Because if somebody creates an organization like that and somebody steps out of line, they have to create their own organization, and the dramas that happen. So all of a sudden, you have 3 organizations deep in organization that's doing things that are not okay by the main organization, right? But the main organization, I mean, it depends on what you mean by that. Like, if you're a Puritan and you think that having like nude, sexualized, like ceremonious magic theater is bad, okay. But other than that, they're not sacrificing animals. They're not hurting people. They're a lot of the time the most ethical members of society. That's actually the mission of the Church of Satan, is to justify the idea that Satanists are not evil and in fact the good guys. And so it could be so confusing when your kid's missing in a circus and you're wondering who the person who took the kid is, which is smart because it's probably going to be the guy who's wearing a nice suit and pretending to be a minister anyway. It's not going to be the carny that you end up blaming, right?
Well, why did they have to dress up like a circus? Why couldn't they just come up with this philosophy?
Because in California, good question. In California, the aesthetic of wearing black was really, there's twofold. One, goth is not. Once we realized that the 19th century coal movement had covered all of the buildings in black coal, we sandblasted them clean, and we looked at the stained glass windows and we're like, dang, goths love pink, goths love mustard, goths love crimson. You know what I mean? Like, goths love the brightest colors and wore peach and periwinkle, and they weren't into wearing black. But people didn't understand that, and after the 19th century Enlightenment period, there's a realization that nature is conquering all of the failed attempts at civility that humanity has ever tried. So there's a move into nature through the Enlightenment period. The idea of, New Harmony and Emerson and Thoreau and all those guys. But there's a reaction to that, which is the Romanticist period. And they're saying, wow, actually, I freaking like these buildings. I like living in Paris. I don't care if there's venereal diseases. It's cool here. And so people start saying, all right, yeah, there's arsenic in the water. Deal with it. And people wear black, and they're kind of interested in the Edgar Allan Poe-vian, thing. And that continues on. And then you have this emergent... Yeah, essentially Romanticism from emo. Yeah. And so that continues on into cinema, because by the 19th century you have black and white movies, and black and white movies become, the new cool thing. But by color in the 1950s, black and white is a choice, and it represents this dynamic, which is this surrealism from the world, and it's reminiscent of German expressionism. And we're thinking of Fritz Lang with the single eye who's colorblind making a movie, and it's changing everything about him film, that it's expressionist as opposed to something that you're supposed to be immersed in real, like some sort of French cinema, right? And so black and white television and all of these things we don't even watch anymore, those were really in vogue. And we have the Munsters and the Addams Family and all of these other and Batman, right? So these are the kinds of aesthetic that are behind the black and white is cooler look. Yeah. And so out of that, in the 1960s,
it's just like a bunch of emo kids just getting together with a stylistic choice, and then they're like,
totally
check this out over here, what we were thinking about.
Yeah, actually, I need to ask Paranoid American now, but like from Gunsmoke, Anton LaVey, who's the bald bad guy? Bad guy, Gunsmoke, bald. Oh my gosh.
I can't remember it.
All right, so basically Anton LaVey shaved his head and based his whole look on the bald villain from Gunsmoke.
Yeah.
That was part of the deal, because he's like, America has, and that's back to Bernays, because Bernays' Straussian Columbia conspiracy was to help produce Gunsmoke. So Gunsmoke would have, there must be an American ideology with an American mythology of the American outland, which is conquered and colonized because it's empty and it's filled by the American cowboy. And the American cowboy wears a white hat, and the American villain wears a black hat, and the American cowboy with the black hat dies. And the American cowboy hero with the white hat wins. And it has to
Sounds
happen.
like a lot of things. That sounds like samurai movies.
Right. Well, that's also that same ideology. I mean, samurai movies, they come out of that too in the 50s and 60s.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So honestly, at this point, it's like, you know, with all this like symbology and like what it actually does to people and like how it transmutes their energy into different things, like, I don't know. That's really all I could wish for people at the end of the day. Like, I don't think in good conscience I want to wish everyone a lot of money or like a lot of kids or whatever. I could only wish people a lot of energy. Like, I hope everyone has the necessary energy to do what the fuck they need to do. That's all I could wish for you. It's like, I hope you have abundant energy. I hope you have lots and lots of energy. Like,
yeah, I hope people let go of things that are using their energy if they and realize they don't need them.
That's really what it's about. It's like you're eating bad foods that ultimately drain you of energy. You drink a lot, that drains you of energy. You spend time around shitty people, that drains you of energy. You spend a lot of your life doing a job you don't like, that's expending a lot of energy. I mean, it's really about managing how you spend your energy, I guess, which is more valuable than money if you really think about it.
Kurt, what do you think about spending your energy?
Kurt, are you awake?
So I've been listening, but I've also been like, my brain just had one of those moments where it's just like
it depresses. It depresses Kurt to remember using his energy. I remember this one time he was delivering a pizza to a guy who was like on a private jet, and he had to call me about it. You know what I mean? Like, Kurt's used his energy for that reason in practical. It's not even theory to Kurt. Sorry.
Money is an invention. I hope people understand that. Like, we never approach that fact as a society. Like, money is a human invention. Like, it's not things that you actually physically need. You need, Maslow's hierarchy, food, water, air, then, love and belonging and all that stuff too. So
you're trying to take my money, bro?
Like, no, we would all have a lot more meaningful lives if you started with the question, what makes my life meaningful? And then secondary to that, you're like, okay, do I have my needs met by buying into this money system, which is totally, totally fake. Everywhere is totally, totally fake.
I think he went out.
Fix that mic. Fix that mic, bro.
Mic check.
Kurt, mic.
Check.
Yeah.
Check. 1, 2. Yeah, even with like, if it comes down to like gold, even as that was like the early form, one of the early forms of currency, it's still an invention. It doesn't feed you. It doesn't nourish your body or nourish your soul, which, I believe you have a soul, even if you don't believe it. I believe you have a soul.
I believe, fellow soul haver. We are the soul havers, one of us.
Fudge, yeah.
One of us. Yeah. Soul people.
What's your soul made out of, Kurt? What's your soul made out of, Kurt? What is your soul?
You're implying that it has to you have to reference it to a substance. Maybe substance is in reference to the soul. Boom, get fucked.
Ooh.
Man, I feel like the devil.
You know what I think? I have an answer.
Back.
I have an answer, Andreas. I think the soul is made out of the same stuff God is. Like, I think God is an ocean, and the soul is just one little tiny water droplet from that ocean, and it gets put into a body, and the body lives its life, and the body dies, and that little water droplet
Mom.
goes right back into the ocean.
That's pretty good.
That's what I think. Yeah. I think so anyway.
That's pretty sweet.
I was so desperate to give you a burn. It wasn't that bad.
No, you can burn. You can give me.
No, I think you burn me for that. Like, I don't think I'm terrible for believing in this. Okay, like I realize it could sound stupid and silly, but I don't care. Like, I mean,
it's true though. The idea of the soul has to be transubstantiated as like a substance, where it might be better to describe as an accumulation of epistemological response. Like, we're like, this is what we're referring to as soul, but it might be that that's like energy, and energy is matter, and that it's more about how it's the soul, because everything is like, how is this atomic mass water? Why is this hydrogen and oxygen? Maybe that's kind of not the substance question there. It's like, how together are we souled beings? Like,
All right.
does your cat have a soul, right? Does your chair?
Hells yeah, I hope so.
Hell yeah. Reference. So I'm going to reference a dream I had. In the dream, I was basically in this cave, and it was almost like a meat cave, you know? We hear the words meat cave, not like that, but it's like, you know, it's just like the walls.
I'm a horrible person for cutting you, but I gotta say this real quick. Pinky, Longo was interesting and awesome, and I thought we did a pretty great thing. We talked a lot about the Knights of the Golden Circle. I know people are doing like a drama thing because of the Thomas thing, but I feel like that's like a wrestling show, and don't worry about it. And yeah, Longo's, I would recommend it if you're interested in how like PepsiCo and KFC are genetically sterilizing people allegedly. Sorry. I love you, Kurt.
Okay. So we're in the meat cave, right? And there's like eyeballs just like drooping out of the ceiling and the walls, and they're just like, you know, they're just like watching you. Not like, you know, in a sense of not watching like a security camera is watching you. It's like watching you, taking notice of you, and observing everything else. That was the essence of that particular dream. So I'm not making factual claims about the dream. I'm saying that you can view the soul as basically the window to something else. You there, if you, well, maybe even if you don't believe in a higher power, objectively, you are a sensory being, and you're constantly sensing these things. And these, whatever you sense, in one way or another, it is going back into the universe. So, like, you can't view the soul as just kind of either a sensory device, or you can view it as a window of something that is divinely communicating with itself. Because, like, what if... Just picture that symbolism, I guess. What if the world is just all eyeballs? What does that mean? Well, it means that something is expressing itself, and you are a part of that divine self-expression. Yeah, and that's kind of a rehash of the phrase, you are the universe.
I really don't want to psychoanalyze you right now, but the word, like, meat cave, like, okay, keep going.
Vaginal.
Yeah, thanks.
No, that is a great... Thank you for generating that AI. It's that's one of my favorite AI artworks I've ever seen in my life. We did it, guys.
That's cavity, baby. That's Kurt. Kurt in the cavity.
You have to send me those photos now. I can get that framed. It looks beautiful.
You know what blows my mind is, like, I hear the kids don't like the AI art. Do you think that they're just young and impressionable and people are telling them what to do? Or do you think that they're literally, they look at it and they're saying, you know, because I'm like, well, you can make it look any way you want. And they're like, no, they don't like the way it looks in general. What do you think? Is that like a Crystal Warrior filter?
Yeah,
like, are kids just better?
Everything influences everything. That's not esoteric. What I mean is that with AI arts, the problem is relatively with monetization, and we live in a culture that wants to make money and monetize things. And well, with artists, sometimes artists do actually need that money. So all AI is in reference to other works of art, and that isn't always monetized. And objectively, yes, on some level, that is probably a problem. But as far as like, well, can you still do like interesting things with it? Can it be an aspect of fun? I don't think it's... I think it is important to not diminish other things just because you think, you know, your own art or your favorite artist is naturally superior to a reflection. Like, sometimes reflections of art are even more interesting than the source material.
Were you scared ever, like, as a kid? Were you much of a frightened child? Were you a timid child? Do you remember?
You sound like Freud.
That was because we talked about meat caves. I'm sorry. I meant more like I don't remember being very afraid, especially of media, like, much. So I wonder about, like, I know children that many children are afraid to use the internet. They're afraid to use YouTube. They might see a bunch of things they're afraid to see. They don't want to be seeing yet. Like, I wasn't like that. I wanted to see as much as possible. But I think people know, like, kids generally know, like, it's just so crazy out there now. That, like, the potential of what you can experience, so they're more reserved. Do you think that, were you reserved like that?
I think I was a pretty reserved kid to a degree. The only thing I was really afraid of, like, now I'm kind of the opposite. I love the ocean, and I'm almost like fearless of that area. But yeah, I was kind of afraid of deep water, just like fear of that unknown specifically, but not really fearful otherwise, I guess.
Okay, that actually, okay, so I did notice
If that
this
answers your
once
question.
when I was like in my 20s. I was in Argentina in this huge lake, and for whatever reason, that, I mean, like, sharks, I'm like, they're probably busy, but like being the only thing in a lake besides a potential megalithic cryptozoological creature like the Loch Ness monster, for whatever reason, the Argentinosaurus, or that idea, like, like, is a little bit more rationally scary, like deep lake. I don't know why. Deep lake's scarier than an ocean.
Do I what?
I just
No.
realized that I've been muted for God knows how long.
Did you have a point? I'm sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
Oh, it's all good. I've been trying to jump in with a couple things, but I was just like, oh, maybe it's not the time.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Just psychologically
so
beating you down. Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's like, it's all good. I just won't talk about it yet. But so I was going to say that I totally echo that. I'm not afraid of a lot of things. I was like kind of balls to the wall with the internet when I was a little kid. I would just research anything. Like, I wanted to know more. I left the outer limits. I like, Coast to Coast AM. I listened to every night. Like, I had sleep problems because I was always up all night listening to Coast to Coast. But when it comes to the ocean, if I was dropped, still to this day, if I was dropped off of a boat in the middle of the ocean and the boat took off, I couldn't see it anymore, I would probably have a heart attack. Because imagining all of the things that could be under me, it doesn't matter if there's anything under me at all. It's just what could be under me in the ocean. It would scare the shit out of me. But I wanted to tell you guys about a dream I had, because he was talking about a dream. And it's not always a good idea to fall asleep listening to a book. All right? I just want to tell you. Sometimes it is, though. Nightmare, but it was amazing. I fell asleep listening to The Golden Bough, this book, and it was like totally occult crazy shit. And so in the middle of it, I was probably like 4 hours in the book listening to it on YouTube, and I had this dream, and I want to try and describe it while it's still on my mind, now that I'm not muted, is like, God, I don't know how to explain it. It was like another level dream. I keep on having these like next level dreams this last 2 months, and this was another one where like people are killing me over and over. It's like this theme keeps on coming back. But this one was wild because we're using mind power on each other. And so everybody in the dream is all using mind power. Everybody's trying to be like the chief wizard. And they're all fucking with me, like, because like I keep on resisting all of their like illusions and stuff, And like they keep fucking with me, and like they hid my wife, and I couldn't find my wife, and so I'm like ripping into people, killing them, trying. And every time they come back after, and they killed me, I'd come back. We'd be like sending illusions at each other, and like it was like we were like manifesting all of this shit. And I'm like trying out different things. I'm trying to figure out like how can I get over on these people and just like shut them up. I want them to stop. Like, I don't want this war anymore. Just leave me alone, So I'm trying different tactics. Like I'm trying to do angelic shit. It's not working. I'm trying to become the devil. It's not working. Like, it's not ever ending. It like would work for a second, but somebody would come back and like have a more powerful spell, and then I would come back with a more powerful spell, and it just was never ending. And I died so many times in this dream, and I never could find my wife. I was kind of pissed off.
I'm sorry, Jack. I'm sorry your dreams never ended up like nice.
Man, but that does sound like a really good episode of The Highlander. I was just reading the word cyberbussy also, and I was thinking how sad it was that anytime you wanted to do a bussy like .sy, you can't because it's Syria.
Bussy baby. Yeah, I gotta fuck, I wanted to pause the question. Anyway, continue.
No, but if you cut off their head, right? That's the way it works with the Highlanders. So there's like a whole thing there, probably. I think.
Shit, I didn't think about that. I was just trying to outpower them, you know.
That
like,
yeah, you can't just outpower. You have to decapitate, and that's a metaphor, I'm sure. But also the idea that the person itself that is like reincarnating, that is constantly happening, you have to pull it apart so it doesn't come back together so easily, right? So if you distribute it, and I think that's also why there's so much cremation today, because they're literally cremating people in order to make sure that there's no.
I want to be
leftover
cremated.
body.
I don't want to leave my family with some fucking fat ass $10,000, $14,000 fucking bill just to bury my dead ass body.
Why not just like buy a backyard and bury yourself in
like
the backyard?
Like a pine box.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
Nah, fuck that. Just burn it.
Just why not make it out of plywood? Like fuck
just
it.
Just fucking burn it. Pick out a bit of bone if you want. I don't give a fuck. Just burn it.
Bob Marley wouldn't get his toe amputated because he was worried he couldn't get into Zion without his toe.
I don't give a fuck about all that. You know, like
I gotta ask you guys.
Honestly,
like,
you know what I think? I think when we die, first of all, our souls get all transmitted through the nearest obelisk, and it gets shot up to the moon prison matrix, and it gets shot back into Earth for reincarnation. And I don't really believe that.
Don't you think burning? No, that's probably true enough. That's probably true enough. But like the idea that your carbon, you're destroying all that carbon, and you're not allowing the nature to like decompose it like at its rate and consume and have it become part of a tree. Like, shouldn't you plant everybody at a tree? Have a tree grow throughout, and then it's. I mean, that's a little weird because then you're eating apples from your grandfather, but. You get my point. I feel like we're supposed to be distributing.
You could look at it as a natural process, like, and that you're giving into the earth, and it's taking your body in the natural way. Or you could look at it like that you're cleansing your body away from that corruption. Like it's all a matter of perspective, maybe.
Yeah, fuck that. I just care about my future family members who'd have to deal with my dead ass body. Just burn it. That's all I could say. I do not want to be a burden. That's all I care about. Like. Honestly, but I got a question, by the way. Before I forget it again. Like, we talked before about like quote unquote like self-alignment or whatever, like understanding that concept of like mind, body, and soul, whatever. Have you noticed that when you do kind of abide by that, you sort of naturally attract like the weirdest people, like not necessarily in a bad way, by any means, but the biggest weirdos,
but progressively more and more intense people, maybe.
You want to know something wild?
I tried.
Sorry, I don't mean to exaggerate. So, I went to Argentina. Great trip, awesome, and so lot to talk about there. But I went to a local flea market, and I ended up buying a tie-dye T-shirt. I just love tie-dye T-shirts, and like, there's something. Every tie-dye T-shirt, it's unique. Sometimes they are really fun. And I could wear a tie-dye T-shirt every day for the rest of my life, and they're all different ones. They just look cool. You don't have to be on psychedelics to enjoy them. They just look awesome. But I noticed, like, everybody, when I was on the plane home, it was like people just started fucking talking to me. It's like I don't hate people. But it was just like, it was like something went off, and they were like, oh, this guy, I can talk to him. He's approachable. And like, I didn't change. I was just wearing a different shirt. A cop started talking to me. And no, he wasn't like accusing me of anything, but he kept on talking about the fact that he got his new canine unit dog, like a new German Shepherd that he was taking with him on the plane. I got to see, and I got the sense that maybe he was a little bit lonely. He started talking to me about how he had to fly like 2 different places that day to get his dog, and I was just like, okay, sometimes I am on psychedelics, but this guy is just like being the most friendly person on earth to me, and it seems to be because of the shirt I'm wearing.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Yeah, red, white, and blue. White, and blue is the best. If you do red, white, and blue tie-dye, it's basically American camouflage, and you can wear it.
You're the everyman.
Yeah, that's true.
Red, white, and blue tie-dye.
I also just want to deviate back to like send us a GoFundMe so we can set up a Korean-style shrine for Chris and Terrorist. Because
shit.
we're not letting his family have to pay the bill for this, but we have to make sure he's not just. We don't want to turn him to carbon. Okay,
come on, dude. I think like, first of all, I think cremation is a very honorable thing.
Carbon's the enemy.
Well, if you turn
mean,
yourself into a
Vikings
little
did it.
diamond ring and you give it to your
true.
daughter or
It's a
something.
true
I guess,
warrior's
so.
death. Okay, you know, like you gotta like put me on a barge filled with oil, flammable fluids, and just push me out to sea. And
Why
then
do
shoot
you
a
think?
flaming arrow
Why
at
do
it.
you? Why do you think it was that the early Christians were burned at the stake? That they were like the thing that they were so afraid of.
Yeah,
that
but they were
tried to
burned
do.
when they were alive. Like I'd already be dead. It really wouldn't.
No,
matter.
but
I
it's
mean,
not even just being alive. It's like the disintegration of the body. I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm just a superstitious Slav. That could be it.
I mean, I don't know, like, cause like I was born technically from like Jewish worshiping parents. You know, like they named me Christopher after all, so it's like obviously, you know, so like
try
they
their best.
They're not. I don't think they're the type to cremate their relatives. This is purely my own like. This is my own secular reasoning, if anything.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because I'm thinking purely economically. I'm
You're like a
'cause-
monk, yeah.
No. It's also like I've seen my friends like the shit they have to fucking like my Catholic friends like the shit they have to deal with like the funeral shit. It's like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
nightmare.
You
It's
heard
like
about the
it's like-
Neptune Society? Do you know about the Neptune Society? Neptune Society's cremation.
I wanna know.
It's a cremation service from the 70s. It's pretty much the most famous one. And what they do is they scatter your ashes at sea for Atlantis. You know? Pretty
Oh,
cool.
shit.
Yeah. Go on
That
a
is pretty
boat.
You know what?
throw
You know
out
what
to
is
sea.
really cool though. It's like someone came up with the genius idea of turning your ashes into like a precious stone, like compressing it into like diamond or a jewel, and then like I presented that idea to my friend. He was like, "Fuck no, I wouldn't do that." It's like, why? It's like because I don't want my fucking like ash diamond hocked off for like drugs or some shit. You know,
Yeah.
like, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that'd be cool, though. It's like a ring of power. That'd be
I
kinda
guess
neat.
so. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is like my dead granddaddy. You know,
That's
like,
why I like the idea of the tree, because it's just fruit, and what you do with it, it's your own day. I like that
that's
idea.
true.
Yeah.
That is true.
Could
It's
be
like
wrong.
turning yourself into a precious commodity.
I have a horrible
What do you guys think
subject,
is-
but if you have any other subject, we could do it instead.
Okay, I have one
I
last.
wanted to ask you guys.
All right, you can
I
ask
wanted to
first.
ask you guys really quick. What do you guys think is the deal with these super like hyper dreams that keep on happening about being killed and killed and killed and killed? Like what's going on?
Okay, I have
Like,
something
they're
to say
not
about
normal
that.
dreams. And
Maybe
I
it's
feel
like,
about
may,
that.
feel
I
like
think,
I'm
I
awake
think,
while I'm dreaming. I remember just talking in the dream that I had last night. I was saying to somebody that like I dream about you sometimes. Like I was aware I was dreaming. If I wasn't aware I was aware I was dreaming.
so
But it
you're
was
like,
it
instead
was
of
like
having,
real life.
instead of me having conscious, intellectual, verbal battles with people, or maybe sometimes because of, you're having emotional, exhausting processings. So you're imagining fighting with these people, and what's killing you is killing your ego, and it's your understanding of the world and the way you think the world's supposed to be.
Well, I also have one. I want to interject.
I'm not allowed
I
to.
also want.
I'm not allowed to
I
hear
also
it.
want to say, in a comment, I'm not gonna say it's that common, but it's probably relatively common if I came across this randomly. Dreams, where if you have consecutive dreams, like a lot of detailed, vivid dreams where you're dying, that's psychologically signifying great change going on in your life. You know, like an intense change, and I would imagine, like that's not far off probably from where you're at in life, right?
Yeah, and also new understandings,
like-
right? Because you're also yourself is the way you understand things. So it could be also that the ways you're understanding things are wrong in certain respects, certain small things, and that you're learning new ways that are so pivotal in how they change the way you look at things that it's making you a new man, right?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. As I have these dreams, I'm dying and dying and getting killed. Like every single time that happens, I'm a lot less concerned. I'm actually almost.
No.
It's not even scary anymore. To where I'm just like, I guess I'm gonna die in a few seconds. Oh shit! It's not anymore. The first thing that I had where I was saying over and over, it was like, no, dude, they're torturing me. Like this hurts. And then now by last night, I'm just like, okay, kill me, dude. Like whatever. I'm gonna come back. Like we're gonna do this again. Don't worry.
Maybe
about it.
it's like
Yeah.
you're on the internet and you're fighting with trolls so much that you feel like every time you fight with them after the fight, it's like you die from fighting them, and yet it just keeps happening. More fights emerge.
I could try to relate with my own personal
It's like a
experiences.
hydra. Yeah.
I mean, the last time I had a dream like that where I was consecutively dying, I was like a few days in a row, and they were like different ways, like creative ways of dying, and it was like very vivid. It was because like I was a teenager and I was a bad kid, and I got arrested at one point, and I just had to quit weed. I think it was like court mandated. Like I was able to blame my misdemeanor crimes as a juvenile on the fact that I like smoked weed. So by court order, I had to stop smoking weed, and I got like drug tested by a probation officer. And those months, like those 3 months when I stopped smoking weed, every single fucking day, it was like a dream. I just had intense, vivid dreams of dying. I was like getting shot, I was getting stabbed, I was getting eaten by zombies, I was drowning. And it got so bad, like I had to look it up. I was like, what is the cause of these dreams of me dying? And they said it's like, oh, this is psychologically signifying that you're going through a great change in your life, and it's manifesting in your subconscious dream realm as like death and dying. And then it was like, oh, that suddenly makes a lot of sense. And then after that, it was like actually a lot more bearable. I think like after like a few more months of that, like it was cool. And then I just started smoking weed again, and I just stopped dreaming altogether. So that's where I've been since then.
Like, that's awesome. I can
Actually,
tell
that's
you
not
what
necessarily
dreams
true.
really
I
mean.
dream. I
Like,
still dream.
I can tell you guys what dreams really mean that I'm having, like on a straight up like psychological level. Is I'm going through a time in my life that it is change, but what it really is.
Haha.
That
What
I
you get for
want to
trying?
be able to.
Oh, I'm sorry,
and I
Jack.
don't want to have any fear. I don't want to have any fear of the repercussions. Can you hear me?
I got that part.
Yeah.
The repercussions. We're gonna have to start
Like,
playing
I'm
audio clips that you send to the
actively-
messenger.
So
Oh
what
my
I'm
God.
doing is I'm actively trying to. Can you still not hear me?
No, I got
No, we
it.
can
We're
hear
hearing
you.
you.
So I'm trying to actively this is really like a legitimate. Like I'm pretty aware of my conscious subconscious kind of mix, and like talking to you guys about it. Like the great change is but like I am trying to actively check my fear of death so that I can experience it and get everything else.
You're already immortal
traveling
because
around.
your son. You have a child. I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to expose that, but like you have immortality already, right? Like I guess the only way to like fulfill that at this point is to make sure that you're a grandfather. You know.
Oh yeah.
I lost you again. So
You're a father,
like, I
become
guess
a
I wanna be able to
grandfather. If you become a grandfather, you fulfill your destiny.
It's because of my son that now I have fear because I have a son and I have a family to take care of. But I also don't want to like stop experiencing life just because of that. Like I don't want to let the fear of what could happen to my son if I step out of line to get in the way of me experiencing and going forth into the world doing what I want to do. And I'm traveling on a regular basis. Like I'm going everywhere in the country every 3 weeks, like all over the place. And I don't even like try it. I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't have a weapon. You know what I mean? And like it doesn't concern me. And it's like I really want to just be able to
Was that a trans
do what I
joke?
have to do.
Yeah,
No.
I feel you, man.
That's funny though.
Yo, dude, I was kind of worried about you. Like the last times we were like, because we chat in the chat a lot. You know, there's a lot of chatting going on in the chat because that's what you do in the chat is you chat. And when we would always talk shit about, I don't know. Sometimes like I worry about how like some of the people affect you because you feel like it's like people are genuinely promoting a threatening world where it's like, dude, you're like disrupting things that just make things inhabitable for people in my life that I care about, like my child. And like I was like sharing those concerns with you, but like it was hard for me to relate because like, you know, I'm just some shithead. Like I'm just some childless asshole, you know, like I don't know what it's like to have an offspring. So it's
Well,
like,
you have empathy. You put yourself in my shoes to an extent.
yeah,
I think that's why the Kabbalah says to be studied when you're at grandfather age, right? Like you get to a point where you're sure that life is going to continue on, and then you're able to fulfill extra roles.
Definitely. And so like when we chat about those things, like there are people in the APM that like I don't think they're aware of the agendas that they're buying into necessarily, but they are like not good agendas for kids. Like it's not good. It's not good at all. And and it does frustrate me so much that people can't see that, like how, and like we were talking about earlier, like I'm an Aquarius, so I see things from like 1,000, like, and so when I hear certain things, I'm like, okay, that domino is going to fall, X is going to lead to Y is going to lead to Z. That's just the way it is. And I know slippery slope is a fallacy, but not if you have enough wisdom. You can see what's coming from certain things. And it's like, why do these people buy into these, like what do you need to talk to kids? And I don't want to get off on a whole rant, and I probably should stop now because I'll like offend a lot of people. So.
No, you can rant away, dude. I'm actually really entertained by it.
The only bummer is that there's like a clipping
So,
to
like-
your audio, but I love what you're saying, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. No, my favorite thing that I like to do is I like to like, some of the comments are just so funny. Like if you read them out loud and you record it and you send it in like the voice messages, I'm like, Jesus Christ. I would listen to it and I'm like, I can't believe someone typed this out. Like when you read it out loud, you're like, holy fuck.
Right?
Like so like,
it really brings it puts it in a new light when you read it out loud, because when you read it out loud, you realize that if somebody was saying this in a conversation, like, strangers would be looking at them like,
I lost you.
say that? When you read it, you're kind of cerebrally going into it, right? But I don't know if you guys wanted me to continue on that vein or not, but I will. I totally will.
We got to get you to record it. I feel like the glitch is like kind of brutal, but I do want to hear it. That's the thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been looking at some of the APM
I just want to
stuff.
say, like,
Go
it's
ahead.
that, like, if you want kids to not be bullied, teach them not to be bullied. We have a zero tolerance of bullying. But what you don't need to do is go and talk about sexuality with kids. You don't need to talk to them at all. And when parents are saying, I don't want you to do that, it's not because they're like, they don't like your gay agenda. It's because it's not appropriate to talk to children about sex. It's just
One of the
and just
first
don't
time,
do it. Just don't do it.
The first time I heard about sex, I was like probably 5 or 6 years old, and I was watching.
I was watching around that age.
I also had that book. I had the book from New York with the fat people. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
watching Forrest Gump. And so with the Forrest Gump thing, I'm trying to understand what's going on.
I'm gonna cry.
And there's this scene, and he's about to make love to Jenny, and I'm like, what's the deal here? And it's like, well, when a man and a woman get together and they're going to have a kid, or like, that's like the biological reason, there's intimacy and there's biological incentive through emotion and hormone that makes it feel really good. And it causes the man to ejaculate an amount of sperm, which are the little egg things, into the actual egg, right? And this is what and women have an egg, but it's not like a chicken egg, it's inside of their body, so they have to
It would
go
be
together.
cool if it was like a chicken egg.
It's kind of like whales. Forget about it. And that was Forrest Gump, and that was sex ed, right? So I don't know, I feel like that's okay. I don't feel like that is that wrong? Is that not the way to find out? Like, what do you need to know? How is an indigenous child in Aboriginal Australia initiated into the fact that her sister is pregnant, her mother is pregnant, that people are having babies?
The
by
livestock
having
is pregnant.
the livestock is pregnant. Your
It's the
pig
same
is
shit,
pregnant.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a thing where we have weird taboos, and the word taboo, right, which means to have a ritual, which is to change you from societally accepted as a child into societally accepted as an adult. That ritual is called a taboo, but we've made that word to be something that no one should ever do. That's not what the word means. It means the thing you have to do to be an adult, right? So it's very strange what we've done to the word taboo, and this idea of fetishizing sex so that we turn it into this like thing that can be commodified and turned into something dirty. Well, I think that everything
also a
we
source
see
of
bad about sex is
insecurity.
associated with commodity. Yeah.
I was gonna
Well,
say.
yeah,
it's
and
a
that's
source
the
of
whole thing,
insecurity
is
for a
that
lot of
sex
people.
is literally like a penis going into a vagina and creating a fucking baby. And so what?
It's not
if
much
you're trying to
different
teach sex
than a
ed,
B-20. It's not much
if you're
different than a
trying to teach sex
B-29
ed-
jet and another B-29 jet trying to fuel each other in the midair, right? You connect the jet to another jet
Sure.
while they're flying.
Yeah, there's no difference. What I'm trying to say is anything beyond that isn't sex ed. It's like
So
you're
there
not
was-
teaching
so I
sex
did-
anymore. You're teaching something else. And
Well,
why do
I did
kids need
hear-
to know about that? And why can't you just tell them yourself? Like,
Yo, I did hear a very
and why
freaky
would you
theory.
need to
Okay.
tell them yourself?
Yo, this is like somewhere along like fringe Rosicrucianism, or I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But apparently, humanity is on course to evolve to a place where we could evolve our larynx, like our vocalizing, our vocal emitting organ, to eventually like distort matter or mold matter and manipulate it, like using sounds from our voice boxes, and eventually we could artificially create embryos that way by speaking it into existence. I mean, I don't know how this would work. I just heard about it, and like, because it was from this military physicist guy. I don't even think he's a physicist. I think he's some scientist guy, but he's like super into Rosicrucianism, and he says some like pretty profound shit. But he was narrating something where apparently like a prediction is like one stage of human evolution is learning how to manipulate our voice in such a way where we could manipulate matter with it. You know, we could like emit such nuanced and subtle frequencies where we could bend things from like hard solid material to like actual biological matter. You know, like, I don't know. That's the extent of it. It's not my theory, but it sounds pretty fucking cool.
So are you
And
that weirdo you're trying to
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
I don't want to be a disruption. I'm just going to mute myself and listen. I love you guys. If my bars come back, then I will rejoin.
That's how I felt all of yesterday. Don't feel bad. I literally went through the same thing as the host of my own show yesterday. Kurt, you were there. Kurt, what are you thinking about? Think about ladies?
Oh yeah, all the ladies. No, I just, yeah, women are.
Yo, your mic is.
Chris, I don't know how Chris survived this.
Yeah.
He's like, wow, this is like everyone I hang out with that don't know how to get their mics in there. Like, yeah.
No, we're all
Chris
good.
Chris is a really humble man. Thank you.
I love hanging out with my friends on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. Like right now, if I had to define what we're going through as a species, no, it honestly feels like the world. The world population. I don't think the world population is contracting, but a lot of countries under Western influence are contracting in their population, and probably will over the next couple decades. So I think that really has changed the dating world in an instinctual sense, because like we all want to follow the tide, you know, whatever we collectively decided is good for the species. Right now we've collectively decided, oh, less population good, even if that's false. You know, that's what people are deciding. So I think to some degree, I think a lot of men just need to accept loneliness. You know, it sounds bad to take that, but it's not that bad. Like being. Like, I know our society is fucked up and we've been really atomized, and so we do need to seek out important connections with people. But we also
I heard you say that we have to accept
aspect.
the love of Venus. Did you not say that? You didn't, did you? You said little penis. You didn't say love of
Venus? That's probably true. I don't know.
Which one was it? Love of
Venus?
Here's the thing.
I'm sorry. What were you gonna say?
I guess, you know, if women don't want to be with men.
What if you don't have a little penis?
That we're in. It's like, what about penis? What?
Never mind. Keep going.
If you don't have a small penis,
just keep going. Never mind. Let's hear it out first.
Yeah. I think it's. Yeah, going to a lot of other countries, I think there's just a similar, you know, psychological process going on. It's like it's like people are afraid of intimate relationships because, like, if we're so atomized and we're caught up in our own stories, you know, how do we build successful relationships and fall in love with other people if the self is the main focus? And so you can either give into that and try to be a people pleaser and succumb to those forces and then end up in a relationship where that is dragging you down as a person, or you can just accept the world. If you just accept the world as it is, respect where people are going, you don't have to follow them off a cliff.
But
it might be better to be single.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know what you're talking about, and I think as like as sometimes as like predatory and as pragmatic, brutally pragmatic as I can seem sometimes, at the end of the day, I just want you guys to know like I do value romance. Like I think romance is something that humanity should value. And I think it's like a beautiful thing, like I think it could only happen even as a spiritual person or whatever. Like you're aware, you're on the soul path. I think it's important to know what it feels like to fractalize. I think it's important to know you fractalize for a reason, and you have to forget your true self enough to experience romance, which is ultimately part of the game. It's one of the games within the game, and I really do value that game. I think it could teach you a lot of valuable lessons, and I think there's a lot to say about like a romantic bond with a person. It doesn't have to. I'm not like fundamentalist about
What
it.
is
Like,
a
I'm not gonna go,
romantic bond exactly?
like a very emotional tie, like something that stirs the soul, like a person that moves your soul to the point where
Do
it
you have
affects
to
your
have
mind
like
and
a
your
love
body.
at first sight thing, love at first sight, or can it be like your
No, I
parents
think
assigned
chemistry.
you at birth to be married, and after like 6 years, you've got a kid together who's awesome, and like you're in India in the 11th century. Like, can you develop that bond, or is it like it has to be love at first sight, hormones, like primitive,
I think it's like I think it is ultimately chemistry.
primal?
Like football. It's like football. Like how football is like chemistry. It's like about plays running, and then there's like reactions to that. I think it's the same thing. You bring two people together, and if there's potential for it, you're gonna see a good football match, and you're gonna see some reactions. Like, and that reaction could potentially lead to a baby, a marriage, a family, a whole dynasty. Who knows? Maybe an empire. Like,
The good old nuclear family. Am I right? All the nostalgia. No, the comment section was kind of killing me. They're murdering me over there in the comment section, but that's okay. Yeah,
I
it
always
was
love
it
it.
was pretty funny. But no, I'm yeah. I don't mean to be totally dire about that. Wasn't my goal to be dire, and like I do think it's like there's so much you can say about it because I don't want to present it as universal truth. I'm just trying to read where the world is at, and like if you're actually trying to help people, well, I think society tells you lies all the time. And I think we're a lot really jaded because like, well, for example, the boomers built the world that we currently have, and the formula that they have is way different. Like if we're an entirely narcissistic entitled generation, where do we learn that behavior? Well, it came from the boomer generation. That's like, you want to talk about a narcissistic and entitled generation, it is the boomers. I have to talk, even if they, yeah, I don't want to go off the deep end, but I think people just know it's true. Uh, but now the model that they used while the population was exploding, to get into relationships, it's not going to work with our generations. And so, how do you find love and belonging in the context of all the fake narratives that we were told in the past? Welcome, Jeff. Sorry, I was in the middle of a rant. In my
Fake
opinion, you
narratives
do
will be
have
a
to
good
balance that line. Like you have to constantly fall. If you fall in love with the world first, like a romantic partner may not follow. A common narrative is that, well, it's just law of attraction. I think that's all bullshit. I think people are lying. These new age lies are lying to you as well. So just be happy, and if you're happy, like you won't necessarily need a romantic partner. And
I agree
I
with
think we're
that. I totally agree with that.
So what
well,
I
yeah,
find really
and like
ironic
there are a
about
lot of relationships that can contribute to your life.
So if I'm really ironic about that is like that idea of pursuit of don't worry, be happy. This ties really good into why I brought on James just now, because James earlier we were talking about Satanism and what Satanism means, right? And like how Crowley was not, when we talk about Crowleyism versus Anton LaVeyism versus the Temple of Satan or the whatever these things are, they're all super different. And Crowleyism is not really Satanism; it's like New Ageism. Maybe you'd have a better way of saying that, or a more accurate thing to say, James.
Yeah, first of all, don't call it Crowleyism, because that's like exactly what
Right,
he wrote.
Rastafarianism. Sorry.
Well, that's a different thing actually, but I mean, he wrote countless poems basically making fun of the concept of people following him, as like a savior or something like that, because he wasn't. He's not a, you know, the word prophet is used in the Book of the Law a lot, but it kind of means something different than like a savior archetype or something. So first of all, the word, there he is. The word is Thelema, right? Thelemic ideas is basically what he was talking about. So, well, bring me up to speed. What were you saying?
Well, I mean, earlier we talked a bit about Satanism, but like more importantly, like you can go on about Crowley for a minute here, just on what he actually was talking about, because I think it relates a lot more when he talks about, you know, evil people don't mean to be evil because Satan thinks he's more righteous than God, but also this idea that society is forcing you to do things which are not good for you, and then telling you that that's good. And then telling you that anytime you're adjacent from that, you're evil, right? Like,
right.
So do without will doesn't mean what people think it means.
I mean, that's not the full phrase either.
In my opinion, it's do as thou wilt, as long as it doesn't fuck with other people's agency. That's my policy anyway. It's like, do whatever you want, just don't fuck with other people's ability to do whatever they want. You know, like that's my thing. I think if
what
you
if
do
they're
that,
evil?
What is that evil?
No, what if you think they're evil? So you're like, oh, I gotta interfere with them to stop them
No,
from
you
doing
can't. Like that's what I'm saying. Like if everyone just unanimously agreed.
Yeah,
do
but
whatever
you
the fuck
just
want, just
said
don't-
that what according to your thing. Let's just say someone doesn't do that and they're a psychic criminal, right?
No, you're
How do
right.
you deal
then,
with that?
Then the whole thing falls apart. Then it's never gonna work. Everyone has to do it, or else it's never gonna work. You're absolutely right. This is like one of those impossible dreams, like impossible moral standards. But if
if somebody's in the middle, if somebody's in the middle of committing violent acts, like you don't need to just like let them do what thou wilt. Like that's totally cool to interfere.
Guys, hold on. Let me just clear up the phrase first.
Yeah, exactly.
You're kind of killing it here. So
sorry.
That's all right.
No, but that's exactly what the problem is. Is a lot of time the words are not. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So like give me a minute with this, because I'm sure better thoughts will kind of come out of the right idea here, right? So what you were saying, Chris, is basically that's like the Wiccan creed or the Wiccan read, right? So not to go too far in that direction, but Gerald Gardner actually corresponded with Crowley quite a lot, and he was formerly, I think, a Mason, and he was Rosicrucian, I think. I think it was actually Mason, but he was trying to recreate some sort of English tradition of witchcraft that he saw as like, you know, some historical tradition that modern Wiccans were drawing from. I think that's a little bit dubious, but the thing is with Crowley is if somebody had an idea that they were genuinely adamant about, he would support them in their own orbit, right? So this ties into do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Because the idea is that every being has their own proper orbit, right? And that all chaos in the universe happens when they step out of their orbit, right? So that is when people are not doing what they wilt, right? So let me say it in a different, right? Let me say it in a different phrase. So let me say it in a different phrase so it makes more sense, right? Do what thou willed is the whole of the law, right? So you should be doing what you willed to do for incarnating here, right? And if you think about that, that is the most austere charge to a magician or to any spiritualist that is trying to do their will, or even just life itself, right? It shows kind of like how strict it is, because at any given moment, there's only one right thing that you should be doing, right? And that's impossible. I mean, that should like give you a lot of anxiety if you really care about doing life properly or following your will. It means that you have to know the right thing to do at every given moment, and that's near impossible.
Well,
which
it's not. Let me also
Pretty
say,
samurai, to be honest. That's some
Well,
samurai shit.
I'm sorry because I want to let you finish, but I also want to say like that's only impossible because the way we're classifying what is the correct thing to do is based on, this is the Tao. We're using ritual and we're using facades of material form, saying this is like what happened in the past, and so we get trapped in systems of hierarchy, which are not allowing us to have moral compass. So it's ironic that people think that Crowley is this evil character when really he's saying use your moral compass, right?
Yeah.
Don't trust in authority more than your authority of moral compass. Sorry.
Right, exactly. And you also touched on something, that he's not evil, right? He's not a Satanist.
Right.
Yeah, how do we know that we're interpreting him how we want to interpret him, and like we're giving him like the highest level of charity, and how do we know that this is really what he's saying versus what we think it should be?
By reading his books, by reading all his prolific writings. He's one of the most prolific writers in recent history. Like, actually, ironically, the only person that was contemporary with him that was more prolific was actually what's his name, the douchebag,
L. Ron Hubbard.
L. Ron Hubbard. But that's because he sat.
I hate that you had to call him that for me to get what you were saying.
The douchebag.
That's very good.
like Curl. I mean, I don't want to go in that direction.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I think that he's bad. I'm saying I wanted to have you clarify because you seem to know a lot about him, unlike what other people might
hold
be
on.
able to.
Good and bad isn't the same as whether or not something is evil. Okay, so a human has the potential as a spiritual being and an animal to do things which are both good and bad. And the whole point of his writings are, if you listen to your moral compass, you have the capacity to know what is good or what is right, more than what is good or bad, what is orderly right, right? So the idea of order and chaos are more important than just good or bad. In your life, you will do bad things. You will not always be perfect, but you can try to find perfection. And perfection is not always something that your father can tell you, right? Your own destiny is your own.
So perfection is a different thing. Perfection is literally attaining God consciousness, right? That's perfection. Is like without a single spot, without a single mistake in life. That's like a level of character that we have not known on this planet for many, many, many generations. I mean, that's who the gods are, right? The terrestrial gods. Like when you see a culture that has been, it's like Krishna, right? That's a perfect because that is an incarnation of God, so to speak, or like Babaji or something, right? That's perfection. So like in the Book of the Law, it says for pure will, unassuaged of purpose, delivered from the lust of result, is every way perfect. And then the next line is the perfect and the perfect are one perfect, and not two, nay, or none, right? So that basically means that the perfect and the perfect are one perfect, right? and not two, nay or none, right? So that means like there's no more you, right? There's no more you. There's basically the indwelling God, right? So the relationship to yourself has basically dissolved into pure awareness, right? Which is devoted to a certain deity or whatever, right? Don't think it's the formless, because that's unintelligible, right? So in any case, the perfect and the perfect are one perfect, right? That's union with a God. Are one perfect, nay or none, right? It means there is no God to that person, right? Because there's no duality there, right? So so like when Crowley says in Liber Oz, there is no God but man, that means that our job is to attain this union with the divine, because otherwise there is no God upon the earth but man, right? Now that's a really troublesome, difficult line. Like, I don't like it so much, but essentially, you know, that's what it means, is to attain the union with the divine, and then we can begin to have God on earth again.
It's like the most, like, if you think about the most spiritual being, and this is kind of the idea of Christogenesis. Even this is also ironic that that Crowleyism, and I'm sorry to call it that, but the idea that Crowley put forward, and some of these ideas that we're hearing about Christogenesis are the same ideas, that we are the spiritual beings, there are animals, and that there, yet even with souls, something different about human that is a spiritual being, and so we are the conduit for righteousness, right? We have the capacity as the moral compass to know what is the correct thing to do, and it's not always easy,
So like,
but it's possible, which is freaking amazing, right? It's a miracle.
Right.
So like, what I'm getting out of this is what I think I'm hearing is that without people on earth to do godly things, there is no God but through man.
I think that's a fair way to describe it. What do you think, James?
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't go by that line so much, but that's the meaning, is that like, if it is to be, it's up to me, right? Ain't nothing
The good
but
Lord helps those that helps themselves.
exactly, right? It's like how like, and wish for anything good, right? If you're a religious person, you shouldn't be shy about that, right? It's like how you're if you're putting a limit on God, you're the dum-dum, you know? So if you're actually you know,
I love the
building,
Christ.
sure. And
The Christ is actually, if you read the Bible, it says we are co-heirs of Christ. Christ is like almost a corporation, and the corporation doesn't embody.
These things that I do, you will do greater things.
Yeah, but you're doing them because you are part of Christ. Jesus, Yeshua, is bringing you into a group that's Christogenesis, right? So this idea that you will perform miracles because you are saints, that's what that means. It's not that you're putting it off to some other idol you're calling Jesus, right? You got to be careful about that. You shouldn't take Yeshua and turn him into this Jesus idol that does everything for you, right? That shouldn't just be a blood sacrifice. And it's ironic, again, because Crowley would have told you really shouldn't use
Crowley.
Jesus as a blood. Yeah, you shouldn't use Jesus. Crowley would tell you shouldn't use Jesus as a blood sacrifice for your own immortality, right?
You guys want to hear something funny?
And his general, like, people claim that he's a Satanist, and that's completely wrong. And like, on first glance, I'm certain it looks that way, because that's what I thought at first, right? But if you read the context in which he makes fun of Jesus, and he exonerates Christ, right? he's doing that as a literary device, right?
Right.
He says, like, you know, most Christians would be offended if you reminded them, you know, that Jesus ate with his fingers, right? It's pretty funny. He's got a sense of humor about it, but quite frankly, Crowley was a stellar Christian. In fact, he was a Christian. He came from the Plymouth Brethren.
He was one of the most Christian people you've ever heard of. He almost died because of how Christian he was.
Yeah, those are the most puritanical Christians of that day. Where
no sugar.
Yeah, like
alters the mind.
Jehovah's Witnesses have nothing on them.
He actually literally, I'm not exaggerating. He nearly died because the food and the fasting and everything else like that. He had scurvy. He was dying. And so they gave him to his uncle, and his uncle, they're like, well, he's going to die. So why don't you, like, before he dies, give him a good time. So he got to eat real food, and he got to have, like, alcohol and things like that. He ended up not dying. Then you realize, like, wait a second. So all the things that they were forcing me to do were killing me? And all the things they told me not to do saved my life?
Yeah. And the funny part is everybody uses his moniker of the beast as like some indication that he's the Antichrist. But quite frankly, that was his N-word, right? Sorry to go taboo there. But like that's what his mom, like after his dad died, who he adored. He loved his dad. He wanted to be a street preacher, a Christian street preacher like his dad. Until his dad died, I think of throat cancer, which is ironic. But
chakra speaking,
so did Christopher Hitchens, by the way, which is
and Roger Ebert.
Opposite reason. Yeah, just saying bad things. It's like not so good.
Don't do it.
But what's it called? So he was really young, and he had a real hard time with that. And his mother was no help at all. She was extremely depressed, and you know, was like trying to deal with Crowley, who as a teenager, I mean, there's like a rumor that he basically had one of the maids on his bed when he was a teenager, you know, which is like
saved his life.
Some pimp ass stuff for such a young age. But he was acting out so much that his mother, who was still devout Christian, said, "Oh, you're just the beast from Revelation." And that was like her insult to him. So when he says that, when he calls himself that, that's like his N-word, for lack of a better, you know, like it just
disavowing of his mother, which is also kind of in a Freudian sense, his own, you know, self-proclaiming. And that's also something a priest
So he's
has
like,
to do.
I'm the beast.
Yeah,
well, you know what? He to an extent, he actually avoided it. A lot of people will quote like something you say once, right? If you look at things he consistently said, he was saying like he was kind of looking for other ways to describe himself. He's like, "Call me sunshine," right?
Well, yeah, that was during the court hearing when they said people call you the Beast 666. Is that correct? And he says yes. And they said, what does that mean? And he goes on to explain that the number 666 enumerates.
It's important to remember that Winnie the Pooh is a beast. Okay, let's start with that.
Well, so get this story. It's because the line is great. It shows his sense of humor. He's hilarious. So the number 666 enumerates to 111, which means a whole bunch of things, but specifically it means the sun, right? So then he says to the judge, "But you can call me Little Sunshine," and that's like in the middle of like such a serious,
wildly based, especially considering like context of the kinds of court he's in, because at the time, you know, you have Turing being sterilized, and you have was it Ezra Pound? No, I'm sorry, his early. Who's the writer? One of the British writers, Yeats, right?
Yeah, he was a little punk actually.
Was Crowley also the guy who developed like sex magic with a K and stuff?
He used it and developed it, but there was already sex magic in existence before him, right? Well, even in the
It's
West,
probably a
right?
part of the whole reincarnation process of like keeping like the ancient god people alive. Like you probably had to do some weird sexual
a
stuff.
big thing he did was like take things like that already existed and question their values and say, okay, so like you keep these things as sacred and say these things are evil. Why? And what is it about the forbidden section that bothers you? What happened? Can we approach that more respectfully? You know, maybe somebody didn't go into that like respectfully. It'd be like if you said, okay, we're gonna ban all salvia trips because kids like walk off of walls. But in ancient times, sweat lodges were doing this in a traditional sense to talk to their grandfather spirit. And so he's actually doing something very similar to what the Jesuits did a century earlier, but he's doing it in a secular way, and he's actually trying to make it transparent to the public. He's publishing so much. This is not esoteric in the previous century sense, because he's now saying to people, this is what we're doing, this is how you can do it, you can be a part of it, right? That's a lot.
That's very
a lot
culty.
more.
Yeah,
Well, no, because
no.
cult is the opposite. That's what I'm trying to say. He's actually open sourcing a lot of things and getting in trouble.
Yeah, he's basically being like the opposite of a cult, where it's like it's free information. It's like I'm teaching you how to do this yourself if you want it.
Really, I think that's a major reason why he was, in trouble. They didn't like that about him. He was selling their copyrighted.
So you're
secrets.
saying he
I
was
kind
a
of believe that
warlock?
too. Yeah, fuck
No.
the cult. Let I believe in giving everyone the gun. Like guys, this is how it's done. This is how they did it. But maybe some powerful people would not want that information spread and might do some like terrible things to you and your loved ones. Like for like leaking that sort of stuff.
So yeah, and I think he did face a lot of that in his lifetime, but also his stuff is actually facing a lot of that right now. There's a lot of BS that is just constantly put out about him and his writings, and there's a few sources of that. One of them, that a lot of conspiracies come from, are our friends the Protestants, right? And the Baptist Christians have like endless things to say about it, because they get to have their enemy, their adversary in him, in his media image. It's not actually who he is, because none of them bother to read.
I almost disagree. I think it's actually a deeper thing than that. So like you focused on just now, it's not just the Christians, it's the Protestants, and not just the Protestants, it's the Baptists, and who are the majorative Freemasons in the United States who sell these kinds of secrets.
Oh, he was not an accepted Mason.
Protestant.
Right. So the Baptist Freemasons have an agenda against Crowley, because Crowley is essentially Linux to their Windows, and they make him look like the software pirate who's the worst person, the worst offender.
Because he's publishing it all, right? This is how he met Theodore Royce. Theodore Royce approached him because of his poetry, that he basically published the secret to the ninth degree, which is a post-Masonic order. It's like not a free and accepted order. So he thought, essentially, I can't remember if it was Royce that initiated him all the way up to the 33rd degree in a weekend, which is like unheard of. That must have been like, every single hour of the day, which is crazy.
They have to do a memorization test, which also shows you how great he was at short-term and long-term memory, that he's able to put these things together and able to do 33. He has to do 3 tests, and then he has to do the Yorkshire Rite, he has to do the Scottish Rite, and in order to do that, they also, because of the way they did it, they have to do it's an Masonette site ritual, so they have to establish a new lodge for the purpose of bringing him into a lodge and closing the lodge. It's like the most complicated way to do it, but it shows that he's so well versed in it, right? He understands it completely.
Right, and it wasn't free. It wasn't what's the word? Accepted Masonry, right? It's not an accepted rite.
So because they had to create their own lodge. They established a lodge for the purpose of establishing him. But because the way Masonry works, and this is what Albert Pike was doing, same thing actually, is you establish kind of an open source journal that shows you, which is why the Scottish Rite kept it secret, how you can build a lodge. You can do a lodge literally for an hour and a half if you had to, and close the lodge afterwards. It's just a journaling process, really. And this actually evolved into guild law, into corporate law, into how we do minutes for meetings, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. By business.
Okay, I need you to break down what
Business-
lodge means.
The lodge
But
is
you're
like what
saying
we're
lodge.
doing right. A lodge is kind of like what we're doing right now. A little
APM
different.
is a lodge, yo, straight
Yeah.
up. I think
I mean,
so. APM
de
is an
facto-
institution and a lodge.
De facto, there's a sense to it. It really kind of is. And if you think about it, you look at the Facebook
Yeah.
Freemasonry logo. You know what I'm talking about? The staff I'm talking about. This guy here.
Oh,
There's
okay.
this is the Masonic Lodge logo for, I forget, like a French lodge, which one it is, with the silver sisters or something like that. Very similar to the Facebook logo. So the idea that Facebook established a system that's really convenient for lodgery, and you are able to say, okay, to be one, ask one. Oh, they're invited in. Okay, now they're a member of the private group. The group is a lodge, whatever. But you have a bunch of people that are keeping minutes, and the minutes are recorded. And that's one of the most fascinating things about Masonry, is that Masonry is history. And before Masonry, there's not a lot of history, because history just means like recordings, right? So we have to have lodges that keep minutes of the conversations of the forum. So to a larger extent, also you have anonymity, and that's where the anonymous forum comes in, and this idea that we're a renaissance of the anonymity, but also the idea that people keep the names of nobility, and these people actually become gentry because of these established choices that they're making and their generational investment into the state or the republic that they're at, and that 200 years from now, or 25, whatever it is, we'll publish these things once they no longer might emotionally impact these families, right? And so Roman and also into the Middle Ages, and even this has happened with the minutes of the Constitution. It was like 75 years after the second generation that they decided to publish the minutes of the constitutional meetings, right? But that's all we're doing. We're just keeping minutes.
Yo, I have a question. Shouldn't APM have its own grip or symbol or gang sign or whatever?
Can it be like Slap a Trout, where you do the thing where you're like,
Yeah.
hello,
Yeah,
Slap
you
a
just see
Trout?
someone do that, and you're like, oh, he's with the Brotherhood. He's with the Lodge. He's with the APM Lodge.
You're a snail.
That APM musty.
Yeah. That would be so fucked up if that became a thing. It's like, oh man, it really is a cult.
Well,
Does that? Go ahead.
When you say cult,
It's not bad. It's not necessarily bad, you know. It's like everything's a cult. Like nationalism is a cult.
Right.
Towns
Yeah.
are cult. Families are culty.
So the piano gigger had a good one, but so like when you say cult, right, the negative connotation is like a cult of personality, right? This is like what is Rael and like Ramtha and those sorts of things. Those are culty, right?
It's like a grow.
Yeah, like I mean, Scientology is a cult because it doesn't. The thing about it is it doesn't have a central spiritual treasure to it that it's cultivating in others that are members, right? So if you have something that's devoid of that, it's empty, and it's basically merely either a political entity or an entity that's based on someone's personality or a type of way of being, right, that they're trying to espouse. Now the thing is, like with Scientology, of course, I'm not a member. I don't know much about it, but if they do have anything, it's because they have a lot to owe to what's his name?
I think it's a carrot on a stick for sure. I think you're onto something with that.
No, there's a lot of great things
nothing
because
there.
L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, and Crowley worked together on the Moonchild ritual, and so what was interesting was that you don't think so? Is it not true?
No, Crowley never once corresponded with L. Ron Hubbard. He told Parsons to stay away from that man, and he ignored him, and everything that happened afterward, Parsons kind of deserved, because Crowley really warned him. In fact, called his obsession with like invoking Babylon in a sex ritual, Babyloniness, right? He said he basically was like throwing shade on his idea of invoking Babylon, you know, and he warned him to not do things in front of L. Ron Hubbard, and he didn't listen. And I think L. Ron Hubbard kind of got some ideas.
That might be exactly
give us a
right,
little-
because L. Ron Hubbard, what he did for Jack Parsons was he recorded everything with the most modern technologies. Like, okay, so let's get these machines that we can use, like Enneagram machines are essentially lie detector tests, but we have all sorts of these cameras, microphones, recording EMF machines, and we'll record
Who was
the
Jack
seance.
Parsons?
Jack Parsons was
I can't remember.
Jack Parsons is the based mofo rocket designer who invented most of the best rocket propulsion systems in the world. Lockheed Martin's logo, I'm sorry, I spelled it with like 3 C's, which is better. He invented the pentagram fuselage system. So every jet propulsion system has a solid state connection, which is a pentagram shape, which was his particular choice and logo. He patented the pentagram solid state rocket fuselage, which is used in every major like Boeing today, right? Super based dude, was in contact with everybody. Werner von Braun. There's a show about him called Strange Angel that they made for a while and they canceled because no one's allowed to know. JPL equals 432 hertz. You can go super hard into Jack
Parsons' laboratory.
Dude, I don't know. There's a million things you could say about him, but yeah, we'll do it another time. Sorry. Keep going, James.
So like it's funny you mentioned the thing about him using these machines to basically have a record of someone basically in their speaking in their honesty, right? Because they're kind of bound to that. Well, part of why Crowley didn't avoided him at all costs is because he wanted to check out who this new friend was of Parsons, who was for the way it seemed to Crowley at first, a good student. So he wanted to see who this friend was that he wanted to introduce him to, and raving about him because he liked L. Ron's stories, right? He was impressed with his writing because he's a science fiction writer. So I think he was good at spinning stories. Parsons kind of likes that. He ate it up. So Crowley went and checked him out, basically psychically. So like astral projected and checked him out astrally.
Love it when they do that.
Yeah, and basically saw like a lot of really nasty shit around him. And this is no offense to anybody who might be a Scientologist. This isn't necessarily stuff that people know going into this, or even talking about Crowley and all this stuff. People leave this stuff out because they don't know.
It's pretty hilarious that Crowley got a bad vibe from L. Ron Hubbard.
Well, I'm just sorry to all the people who like never heard of remote viewing, and then, or if they were kind of on the fence about it, and suddenly, for whatever reason, this conversation makes them feel like, oh, you know
bro,
what?
like go
remote
look
viewing is real. It's like, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
that's like a
go do like
terrible reality to realize.
Go look into classifieds for Raytheon right now, like, and they're hiring. Don't think that they're not hiring for remote viewing and that you can get paid more than a doctor. Like,
We're now living in a world where it's like there's no such thing as a private conversation.
It's interesting because those experiments that they did weren't very successful, like the original ones. The guy who does like a TED talk about it. Like it sounds so cool. Yeah.
He harps on about 4 minutes about Andreas in that, which is one of my favorite parts of his TED Talk.
Oh, really? Of course you would. But yeah, yeah, that's the thing. You know, like people think that Crowley was like an evil dude, but he really wasn't. Like he wasn't. Oh, sorry, my cat just.
Are we
No,
talking
never
like he was like
apologize for
Mother
cats. We love cats here.
Mother
Cats
Teresa
are-
level, or like what was he neutral? Is he gray? Like
No,
what,
he
what is-
wasn't.
what's going
So,
on?
like-
Is he Mother Teresa or
His example
You can bring
It's-
that cat
it's-
right up if you want.
is like saying, let's see, make her a star here. She's old. She's not feeling too good.
Aww.
All right. Okay. Anyway,
Like, no, I'm not camera ready.
she's like, please, I'm not prepared. Yeah. So Crowley has a writing where he says, like, you know, everybody's will is different in their lifetime. So like, what ethics help the doctor be a good doctor just will not apply to the mechanic, for example, right? The mechanic can't do his job if he has to keep his hands pristine clean the entire time, right? Whereas, you know, he's getting dirty, oily hands, whatever. If the opposite were true, they'd be a really bad doctor because they'd be infecting their clients. They'd be, you know, like, use your imagination, right? It just doesn't apply across the board for everybody, right? A butcher who is taking on the karma of like killing farm animals for people who raised it and loved it, right? Or for people who will eat from that and support their lives, support their loved ones, and all of that. That's a particular person that can't have the ethic of non-killing, right? They're actually doing a pretty low job for the benefit of other people. So like that's his lesson in ethics, is that it the highest ethical code is do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, right? It means you cannot do anything else than what you are supposed to do in this lifetime. And that means that if chastity keeps you from doing that, from discovering why your soul, what your soul wanted to discover, which is the whole reason it incarnated, right? Then chastity is no good for you, right? It's like that's the
all
line.
right? I really like this a lot, but I do want to pose the question that at what point, and this is just a broader ethical question, and this is, I'm not putting a value judgment on Crowley or anyone. What I'm saying is that at what point does this philosophy, though, become like a self-serving, like I'm justifying my actions by saying, well, I'm not a doctor, so I can be a butcher. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Exactly. And Crowley deals with this. Forgive me, I can't think of which writing it is, but basically saying that basically saying, like, you know, actually the Book of the Law calls it out too, but basically saying that at any given time, you cannot say what your true will is, right? Because people would be going around saying like, you know, it's my will to do drugs, right? It's my will to be you know, to be ripped or drunk or whatever.
Totally.
Right? And what is that? That's you justifying your vices, right? That's not your true will, right? That's your finite will, right? Actually, your finite will is even a little bit higher than that. It's like, I want to be a musician. That's your finite will. That's what you want to do in this lifetime, right? And you will be strangely equipped to do that, right? But even more so, you will be so much better equipped to do your true will than anything else. And he says that you will, like, while you cannot intellectualize it, right? It doesn't come from a thought process. It comes from investigation, right? That you, like a divination in a sense, right?
It's like an unfoldment. It takes time. It takes trying things out too. You're not going to know like what your highest calling is right off the bat. You have to experience a lot of life.
I think what
Right.
really, I think another
Exactly.
thing that I
And
feel like another process, a part of the process would be like a cleansing period, right? Like where you have to have reason to cleanse. Like, and I think that involves getting fucked up. I'm sorry, I'm speaking purely like practically here, like where a person would technically have to like really fuck themselves up in life enough to eventually be like, so I got to change. You know, something's got to change. What do I do? Like
I definitely did
against the
that
wall.
shit.
Exactly. My back's against the wall physically, mentally, metaphysically, and I
Right.
don't know what to do. So I got to turn to someone, and no one in my life wants to talk to me. Eventually, there's like very, very few sources left in the known universe. And who eventually do you turn to? Source or
Dude, how do you know my life story so well? What the fuck?
because it's not just your life story. It's a lot of people's life stories, dude. Like
So-
this is a
yeah.
common pattern. Like we
so
all go
so
through
like,
this in a
I'm
way.
just joking.
There is the Adi Sankara versus Mandana Misra, right? So if you think about like the greatest debate in all time, it's between a mother and a wife and a Brahmin, you know, and the mother and the wife is saying like, how can you understand as a priest who serves God all the time, you know, really the values of the world? And this is almost a Crowleyism in and of itself. Like you probably should spend some time understanding what it's like to be a wife or a mother or to be a father or a husband or a child, like living in a family and farming.
This is
and being
Plato's
cessational.
Republic too. This is some
Yeah.
Plato's Republic. Yeah.
But yeah, in the Mandana Misra, they say, okay, as a Brahmin, I'll try this out. He goes off and meditates in a cave and finds the body of a king who's about to die. And he takes over the body of the king and he lives for like, I forget, it's like 8 months or something like that to understand things and goes through all the sensations that you would go through if you were a king, you know, right? Like a pretty good lifestyle. And then comes back and says, okay, yeah, I get it now still. Like I've learned about it and it still isn't more important than doing like the best you can to make the world like the ultimately best place you can for serving, you know, by worshiping, cultivating a garden that is facilitating better life for all things, right?
yeah. So hold on, I was trying to look something up. Yeah. So like that discovery itself, that discovery itself is like an important part, right? Because Crowley mentions that when you do sort of find your will, you'll find the momentum of the whole universe behind you, and that's when you know that you're doing your true will. That that nature itself is basically assisting you, and that's when you found your orbit, right? It's like by this golden thread shall I guide you to the groves of Eleusis, right? So it says like if you find yourself sorrowful, you have lost the golden thread. I'm going to paraphrase now. You have lost the golden thread, right? By which I guide my adepts to the groves of Eleusis. It means that if you lose that feeling, then you've kind of stepped out of your will. You're no longer doing your will, because and there's a point to where the vices are not serving that purpose, right? So Horace says these vices are my service, right? Or like in Liber Zodi, it says, I bid you not turn from your voluptuous ways, your idleness, your folly, basically, if everything is, it is right if so be that you enjoy it, right? So that intuition is kind of what is behind spiritual maturity, right? So if you are spiritually maturing, you're going to have a sense, a faculty of what's right and what's wrong. So that's kind of the work, right? And skepticism is a huge part of that, right? To not just think that because that purity, because it's enforced in historically in culture, in Christian culture, or I mean in any culture, that's the way to be, just because that's what people say. That's kind of like, if you look at Crowley's life, he was retesting all these things. And there's a lot of BS too, like people saying that he sacrificed children, or I don't want to get you demonetized, but like, being inappropriate with children. He never did any of that stuff. So
He never harvested adrenochrome.
No, that's like, I don't know where that comes from, but
Pretty cool idea though, right?
I mean, for movies, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Fear and Loathing, right?
It's pretty base. Well, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much. I want to do a thing also with you, James, soon. We should do something maybe tomorrow or the next day with Noel, if we can get him on the show. We should do a thing that goes even deeper into this, and I think we can even go into, some the Vedic qualities of that and what it means to self-direct towards righteousness instead of look for a map point or a beacon that you're supposed to go to that's put up by somebody else, right?
Yeah,
that's part of this.
Yeah, we could, and as an ending point, we could look at Crowley as like a modern agora in the Western tradition. Agori, I guess, modern agori. Because of his willingness, and there's a lot to the psychology of Crowley too, which I don't think people lend credence to in his writings or how he comes off. And they also clip things, they cherry pick to like make it sound, whatever. So anyway, we covered that, I guess.
Yeah, it's like the old Scottish adage, like, you F1 goat. You know what I mean? It's just every time. Like, you could be a doctor, but you F1 goat. Yeah. All right. But Piano Gigger, you're also here, and you've been patient, and I know that we're like going deep, but like if you guys are cool, I'll continue for like 20 more minutes because I want to finish that. Is it, can you survive it? You guys want to do it? You all right, Kurt?
Yeah,
sure. All right. Because Gigger, you were talking about an article earlier, and I was trying to find it, and I can't remember, but it's the Charlize Theron one that Jack had been talking about in the APM group. So I'm scrolling through my APM, trying to find it. Do you remember where the Charlize Theron article was that we're talking about? What's up? How you doing, Gigger?
Colin's posts.
They're so good. I just go through Colin's posts. This is like the thing, because I have like 8,000 members. So what I do is I pick my favorite and I just go through their posts.
Colin.
Yeah, bro. Bro. He's pretty serious about stuff. Yeah. Oh, but he's flexing, bro. Look at this. See that? That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
But do you remember where's the one Gigger? Piano Gigger. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you hear me?
Awesome posting, man.
Oh yeah.
I know that, Gigger.
So what was the article about? What was the thing that we're trying to make a contention for? I think Seth also remembers the article. There he is. Seth, do you remember the Charlize Theron article we're talking about? The South African sexual education and Charlize Theron?
Not really. No. Sorry.
I love this Gigger, dude.
Okay.
He's a
I
good
can
guy.
do it anyway.
Same with Seth. I love you both. It's good to see you guys.
I can do it anyway. Let's start with like this, okay? And also, I know that Seth, you've got a monologue to perform, but we're gonna talk about sexuality in South Africa first. So let's do it this way. Penguin Zero is canceled. Kinda, because he was talking. I mean, but like rightwards canceled, which isn't as effective, but at the same time, it's pretty good because it's like saying you're not a cool kid anymore. Because he did this thing, and after the Mr. Beast collaboration with Ava Tyson and all that, he had this debate with Sneaks about the age of consent. Okay, and so the age of consent argument he made was that it's horrible that around the world the age of consent isn't uniform. And someone says, okay, well, it's 16, 13, 12, 9 now in Iraq, right? It's now
Well, I asked them
9.
before in APM, and I got chewed the fuck up. I was like, if there were hypothetically a universal age of consent around the world, what would it be? And people were like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I was like, what? It was a fucking question. I was curious.
Right. And I think it actually is an uncomfortable question for a lot of people because they want to believe that there's a uniform age already, and there isn't. You go to certain states, it's not the same, right? So this idea is really uncomfortable. But then you think about it, and what Penguin Zero says to Sneaks is that he believes there should be a uniform age. Sneaks then asks him, then what about sex changes? Because simultaneously to the Iraq resolution, right? Because we have to remember, we just talked about how Iraq just made the age 9 for age of consent for marriage. But the United States is making it 9 and 14. They're working on for sex changes. And so the question he proposed was, is it okay to have a sex change with your parents' consent as a child? And Penguin Zero said, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. And it seemed like to the audience a double standard because in Iraq, the age, to give your body a way to be accosted, assaulted, and exploited as a child seems pretty bad, but also to like turn your body inside out and to give yourself hormone therapy seems pretty much a life-changing decision as well, right? So this was a major thought about like sexual education, really, and the idea of when do you as a human being start to bring into the question of either of these things, because both of them are a form of grooming, right, towards heteronormative cis behavior for breeding more human taxpayers and soldiers and doctors and lawyers and actors and YouTubers, but particularly taxpayers, or the other way around, which is to say, okay, this is a flex for science and progress and that we can give liberty a try, right? And either
why
way,
can't we
it's
just
taking away
treat
from a
both the
child.
same?
I mean,
why can't we just like?
What do you mean by the
not
same?
be
So you're saying,
hypocrites?
but it's a
Why
question
can't
of also like
the year
when you
for
marry off
what?
when you marry off someone at 9 years old, like that.
Why
it's
can't
still
the year
like,
for being sexual be the same as the year for changing your sex? Like, and you can't even change your sex. But I'm saying, why
right?
does
But
there
there's
have to
not
be
a decided
different?
year. There's not a decided year for that either way. And the idea of uniformity would require some sort of
Well, there could
fascistic
be.
government that enforced a uniformity around the world,
agency.
parity of these laws, right? And so then it becomes really confusing because we don't even have that in the United States. Not right? Not even here. So how are we supposed to expect that to make sense anywhere? And then what is it based on? Is it based on the United States law or the British law or the Japanese law? And how do we do we blur it together? Like, okay, here we'll just mix it a little bit. It'll be like in between both.
Okay.
It's not going to work that way. All right, Seth.
I think you gotta let me get in on that. I gotta just a second. Okay, so like there is a coherent way to think about this, right? Policy in general is supposed to be pointed towards well-being, right? That's kind of the way to objectively think about all of these issues. So for example, with the driver's license, right? When should kids be allowed to drive? Like, who says 16 is the right age, right? The problem is everything kind of exists on a spectrum. It's like, like some 16-year-olds are not ready to drive, and some 14-year-olds are ready to drive, some 18-year-olds. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to maximize well-being, and there's always trade-offs. It's like, well, a certain number of these 16-year-olds are going to get in accidents and screw things up for everyone. But some of them can work, some of them can learn, they can grow.
Somebody
get more
read the word of
experience.
wisdom.
Yeah. And so, like, by picking a threshold, what we're saying is, based on the trade-offs, we think that we're maximizing well-being by setting the threshold here, right? We think that the benefits of 16-year-olds driving is better than the costs. That's why we put the threshold there. And so for like marriage, like girls getting married, we usually set the threshold at like 18 or something because we think that's what maximizes well-being. Because we think, you know, when they're younger than 18, they don't know what they're doing, they don't understand themselves, and you know, the only people that want to marry them are freaking predators anyway. So let's like set the threshold at 18 to, you know, maximize well-being. But if you set it higher than 18, then you're like depriving people of autonomy and liberty, and it's like, how come I can't get married? I'm ready for this, you know what I mean?
So you're saying given for a principle with the promise adapted to the capacity of the weak and the weakest of all taxpayers.
Yeah, there's going to be trade-offs on both sides, right? And so the threshold is aimed at the net benefit, right? And the thing with transgenderism is you need to think about the trade-offs involved in these surgeries.
They're too young. They don't know what they're doing. Some rapists might want to change their fucking sex. It's just you're saying you're about to say
or
that it's
species.
I
could
that,
be a cat
I
right
know,
now. Are you kidding me?
I know you're about to
shit.
say it's different, and it's just go on.
Yes, it is different, but a lot of the factors do remain the same. They don't really understand themselves that well, and so that factor remains. But the question is, when you have the parents involved, like in America, if they're younger than 18, sometimes they can get married if the parents agree. And so what does that mean? It's like the consent of two people is superior to the consent of one. Like the 16-year-old can't consent on their own, but if you bring in parental consent, okay, that's good enough for well-being, right? And so with
okay, so like maybe we should screen the parents for not being fucking weirdos. Maybe we should have a little
Also,
test.
set your microphones like 50-80% too loud, just so you know.
Oh, really? Let me let me turn it down a little bit.
I kind of liked it though because it felt like 90s radio, you know, like a call-in. It feels good.
It reminded me of Ministry or something. The band.
Yeah,
mic right
exactly.
now? Is it
It's pretty
better?
good.
High
Let me.
compression, baby.
Yeah, I turned you back
High
up. Keep
gain.
talking.
Yeah.
talk-
How's the
It was
sound?
like some industrial.
Sound a
vocal.
lot better? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
good.
with transgenderism, like that might be a valid concern. Like, let's filter out the weird parents, and if we've got a normal parent and we've got a normal kid and they're both consenting, then we get the doctor involved.
Yeah, a
and
normal
let's-
parent like Charlize Theron.
Let's make sure we got normal doctors, right? So we verify we've got child consent, we got parental consent, we got doctor's consent, and we've filtered
Okay,
out
but
all
what
the
about-
weirdos.
What about doctors being affirmation only these days, and they are not allowed to say anything to discourage this queer theory stuff? Like they're not allowed.
Well,
And
that's
they
the
can lose their
problem. That's the
jobs.
problem. That's the problem with legislation. So, in my opinion, when you make something legal, when you legalize anything, what you do is you bureaucratically regulate a system that enforces it. Legalization is a system of enforcing, because at that point you're saying we guarantee a certain amount of citizens and taxpayers again are going to be doing this thing, right? So we're saying we're going to then incentivize it to be done because we want to have systems in place to keep it happening.
Yeah, like how there was
So
almost no what are they called, like sex conversion chambers in the entire country. There was like 3 20 years ago, and now there's like 300. That's some incentive going on.
Yeah, to the extent incentives are corrupting the process, you have to fix the incentives. Like, that's not a well-being directed policy if it's just directed towards money making, right?
wasn't it the I think it was in Portland or something. I think an employee recorded a hospital administration meeting talking about how they wanted to increase those
Maximize profits.
Yeah, because each one represents about $300,000 a year with the full treatments. I feel like I'm missing
And
something.
1 million,
No, exactly.
1
It makes
million
so
over the
much-
course of their life.
There's so much money to make. How could you not incentivize that? It's like, yeah, please go for it. I mean, if I was an ear piercer or a tattoo artist and someone came in with a bad idea for a tattoo, but it's $500. right?
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I don't want to be speaking as the expert on this stuff because
Let's give him a solo screen for this part.
Oh, great. Shit. Okay. So like there's like a few cases that I actually empathize with. I think it's important, you know, with like all the political stuff. It's like on off isn't you know, the original movement was for people who are intersex, right? And that would basically be like you know, transitioning them into what's more right for them, right? And that used to be decided by a doctor, right? At birth, and that's the whole assigned at birth thing, right? That's originally what that meant. And I have no relation to the modern thing. I mean, I really don't get it. Like, you kids do your thing, whatever. But the stuff that's like significant is like I have a few friends that are trans, right? But it's pretty obvious for them. And the underlying thing between them is that they both come from twins, right? So that's a thing that I think if you look across the board, that's a very significant aspect of it, is that you have congenital twins that basically, you know, can take from each other in the womb, or, you know, things aren't really divided the way they should be, or and not to say they should or shouldn't be, right? I don't think it's a mistake that you end up in the body that you're in, right? Yeah, cat time. So yeah,
If there's anything YouTube loves,
cats.
cats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice pussy.
Is that saying stuff?
I want to add
So-
to that point when you're
Yeah.
done over there.
Yeah. So like one of my friends, they were born with a twin brother, and they were born female, and they got more girls than I did, and could definitely kick my ass. And so like that was obvious, you know, that was obvious. They got chest surgery, and, you know, still gets like really, really hot straight girls. So that's a thing. Like, whatever, right? I think sex is more energy than really your body, the way your body presents. Because I
Well,
think can interfere, hormones can interfere, and being a congenital twin can basically take what could
Then
have.
there's two parts of you a lot of the time because of that. Let's say you're not a twin, but you have that. It could also be that there's both inside of you, and so
That's
it's
the other thing. Yeah,
yeah.
that's the other thing that I think people like. That's something I'm starting to understand. Is like there's plenty of people who have discovered, you know, late in life that they have a set of ovaries, but they've been playing on the football team and all this stuff, and vice versa. And like, I guess my objective question after that would be, you know, like, how often has that happened in history, and is that a modern feature from plastics, from atrazine, as we learned from, you know, Mr. Jones, or all these factors? You know, we don't know what electromagnetic fields.
Well, they are turning
either.
They are turning the frogs gay, so that's all I have to say about that.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
the
like
frogs are gay, but at least the frogs are free.
well, that's just an example. That's like literally an example of biological phenomena. But what about like where it's just doesn't have that intersex feature? I
Yeah,
mean,
what if it's
what
not
I would-
obvious?
What I would ask is, like, let's say you were in a state of self-alignment, like let's say you were a quote unquote spiritual being, as the New Agers like to call it, like having a human experience or whatever. Basically, you're just conscious of your soul self.
So
How concerned would you be about your gender expression and all that, and like whether or not you're strictly expressing feminine or masculine like you want? So like I'm like
Yeah,
looking at
how
this,
much
like,
would you care what other people interpreted about your body? You know?
so
yeah, like would it really be about that at
Yeah.
that point? You know?
so you've
Yeah,
been
like
every
you're a feminine dude or whatever. Like, oh well, like I'm a feminine dude. I'm a person. I'm real. You know,
You
like-
know what though?
like I am who I am.
The answer is Kurt's tie-dye T-shirt. It kind of is, because like the tie-dye T-shirt, it's like people approach you and like it changes everything, and so people really have lived lives.
Oh yeah,
where
you
they
can
have
put on a
felt
dress,
unapproachable.
dude. Like, put on a
So-
dress. Like, you know.
so
what I'm
yeah,
saying?
you've been
Or
everything.
just be metrosexual.
Sure.
So it's
Or whatever you want to be.
so like as far as like reincarnation says, right? Whether you accept it or not, you've been all these things, and you know, essentially the soul.
I was a lesbian hitman in my past
Yep.
life.
I know that.
Straight up.
I
No
already
way.
saw that actually.
It shows.
That's-
No, I'm just kidding.
That's why. Anyway, so no, but like if you think
I was
about,
also a black woman, and I worked near the railroad. I like, you know, I was giving
Well,
them like
you
soup.
certainly present your transition is like really good. You went with the talented.
Having empathy for things is really a lot like being things, I think, also. And being
Yes,
Well,
things
it's
is
like a
probably
soul.
helped by having
It's a
empathy.
soul transition. Like what I figured is like, okay, like I've been a woman a lot, and so now I'm a man, and so I think I'm just gonna try. And this is just me. Like I'm not saying everybody should do this. Like I'm not putting. This is me. This is just what I do. Is okay. Like I'm a man now, and so I'm gonna be as much of a man as I can be. Like why not? Let's try it. Let's test it out.
Yeah.
Well,
And then
you know,
next
like-
go around, you'll be a whatever.
So the thing
Right.
is, like,
We'll see.
the human mind has this it has this talent for like finding, like, you could call it fetish, right? But like finding a fascination with something of its attention and embodying it in some sort of deeper, serious way. That's just a natural thing that the human mind is talented at. That's what it does in nature, right? I'm sure that's how we learned how to hunt and stuff, watching animals and embodying that. It's a big thing about indigenous culture, is like embodying you know, animal behavior. And I'm not necessarily advocating for what could easily be psychoses or groupthink, right?
Schizophrenia
Or
or something.
schizophrenia, people who need.
I'm not advocating for schizophrenia. It's like you're running for office.
But it's always worked for me.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess what I was partially trying to justify is someone's emergent fascination with being the other sex, and that may come from not being so successful as what you've been presenting as your whole life. But also, if you think about it, you know, from like the soul standpoint, as somebody mentioned, if you've been a woman, for example, for many lifetimes, and you incarnate like Jack McCloud, if you incarnate as the opposite, but you've been doing this for so long, right? That trajectory is still there, right?
Right. It's definitely hard to accept because
I
you've
gotta
been
get
that for so long.
Either you can express.
Seth,
you can
turn it
Think
up
how
slightly.
Dax.
Turn it up
Think,
slightly,
think how
Seth.
Dax felt
I'll
in
give you
Star
the-
Trek.
I
You know,
just a
Dax
little
was
tiny
like,
bit.
Hello, can you
Yeah.
hear me good?
Yeah, I got it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah. So I gotta get in here. Like, okay, first of all,
Go
reincarnation.
to
Like,
science, bro.
you shouldn't be like adopting policies based on reincarnation unless you can prove a mechanism for how your past lives are influencing your current life, right? So basically, from a scientific perspective, you were already going down this pathway. Beautiful, like prenatal, the hormones in the womb, right? That's very smart. That's the way to think about this. Robert Sapolsky, he talks a lot about how important the prenatal, the phase within the womb is, right? So when you're doing science, you're trying to figure out how much is genetic, how much is environment, right? And so we're like, okay, you got these genes, and it's like, oh wait, they're transgender. Was that because of their genes, or was it because of their environment? And then the right-wingers are, oh, environment. Oh, this is social contagion. Oh, it's scary. It's like,
Yeah,
well,
like a weird mother that puts you in a dress at age 4.
Yeah, well, when you've got millions and billions of people, you're going to have weirdos. Oh, no surprise. Like, I'm not surprised there are some weirdos that do weird things to kids. That's sad. But there are real phenomena in excess of the weird outliers, and we need to address the totality of what's going on, right? So if people are abusing kids, that needs to be taken care of as a problem. If there are people that in the womb, there's twins, twins, like there's a spectrum of hormones in the womb. Like maybe if you're at the top of the womb, you get more estrogen. If you're at the bottom of the womb, you get more testosterone. And the twins, they are in different positions. One of the twins is where the estrogen is. One of the twins is where the testosterone is. Guess what? They come out differently. Oh, they have the same genes. Why is one trans and the other not? Well, there's different environment. And that's not something to be scared of. It's not something to demonize them over. We just need to understand those different situations, and their well-being is important too. Just because they got more estrogen in the womb, who cares? And we have to just treat it like, I feel like a lot of this paranoia about the issue it's corrupted by this anti-scientific, like, oh, they have free will and they just randomly choose to be trans, and oh, it's just a fetish. Like, no,
I can accept all of this.
So you're.
Yeah,
so
I
want to
can-
clarify.
Hold on really quick, please. I can accept all of this, but my question for it is just like, why not be able to wait until they're over 18 in America? Like what is the big deal with just waiting until they're adults and they've gone through their puberty the natural way?
But like why? But like why? But a lot of people go through puberty before that or after that. There are people that yeah, exactly. There are people that go through puberty at 13. There are people that go through puberty at 25. It happens. Yeah. So the idea that 18 is the age is sort of this medium.
Yeah, but their frontal lobe is not developing yet. Is the deal. Like
their frontal lobe is not developed at 18. Do not date a girl from 18 to 25 and expect their frontal lobe to be fully developed.
I'm not saying fully developed. I'm saying starting to develop at all, and that, like, God, when they haven't even gone through puberty yet. They haven't even, like, everybody's uncomfortable with their bodies when they're going through puberty. Like, why can't we just wait until they have completed puberty?
So Epiphilia is the attraction to pubescent, and this is because males are mutating and females are keeping the egg at a stable rate. And so puberty is happening in females younger and younger because the idea is to sustain with lack of mutation as much as possible. So you're seeing puberty earlier and earlier. And a big part of that is bone structure, even because the bone structure of a male will continue to develop and their brains will not continue to develop until later in life. And so you'll see men maturing later than girls, whereas girls are maturing in their bone structure and then their mind is fully matured at like years, sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 before men are, right? And so this is something where we can't say that men and women, even biologically, whatever that means, are supposed to have the same values or the same age of consent. Maybe a man's age of consent should be later. Maybe a woman should be 18, but a man should be 25 or 27.
Also, there's another factor. There's also, I mean, I'm sorry to reel it back to like the reincarnation aspect, but I do think the family lines thing, like ancestral lineage, like is a big factor. You know, if you did take, I'm sorry, like if you did take reincarnation as fact, which I don't know, if you did decide to do it just as a thought.
Which is why I'll never let you drive me, Chris.
I'm just saying.
Because you think you might get it better off next time. I know what you're thinking.
No. I'm just saying, like, perhaps a part of it is like that's your assignment, because every family line, every family lineage comes with its own fucked up tendencies, right? Its own generational curses, its own ancestral curses. That's partially part of your job, to be born in the family you are. I know it's a tough draw. Like some families are more fucked up than others. I get it. But I think like part of your job, like incarnating into your family line, is to kind of make it better than it was, at least. Just even if it's like a little bit.
I
I
agree
think
with
that's enough. It
Yeah,
makes
you
sense,
can,
you know.
That's like
you can make
like
you can make the world a better
ancestral.
place without reincarnation.
That's like
That's true.
like
That
an-
too.
ancestral duty. I you know, it doesn't necessarily apply to like modern culture and everything. I don't think that's the way people see things, but I don't think they have to. I think that sort of thing gets acted out anyway with what you go through anyway. So like, you know, to think that it's like something supernatural is kind of silly, because like whether this is like a fact or not, Seth, right? You're in it and doing it either which way, no matter what nomenclature you give it, it's happening. So
I got it.
kind of
I got a question for Seth.
irrelevant.
So when
If-
it comes to transgender, right?
Yeah.
It's an experience, right? And it's a knowing, and it's like I know that I'm this or whatever. Like, well, reincarnation could be the same thing, and like, who's to say one is different than the other? You know what I mean? Like, if we're gonna say that one is bogus, then like the other one's bogus. Like, you can't have it both ways.
Oh, well, that's if you misunderstand the entire phenomenon. Back to your prior point, and then I'll address this point. You're saying, well, you're saying something to the effect of why not just wait till they're 18? The question is the well-being calculation. It's an open question. Is a threshold at 18, does that do well-being maximally? Some people say yes, some people say no, because maybe that's too late to like delay puberty and whatever. If you do it earlier, maybe that's higher for well-being. And there's going to be errors, right? There's always errors no matter what policy you're talking about. Type 1, type 2.
Okay.
And so you're going to have errors no matter what. The question is, which threshold minimizes errors on both sides?
The
It's
one
an
that
open
you're
question.
fully grown up. I don't know. Maybe that one. That's just me, though. That's my personal perspective.
That is just you.
That's
I
definitely.
feel like the contention is that it could be in Canada or in Arkansas or something 16, and it could be 19 in New Zealand, and that like this is going to be an argument. And so the fact
Well, I
that
don't care about New
your
Zealand.
question, basically, that's the thing. You sound like the Taliban, and you're like, why can't it be 9? That's what I hear. That's the same argument, but your argument is 18 makes sense to you instead of 9. That's the only difference. You know what I mean?
No, because I'm providing reasons for why I think it's a problem.
Oh, I mean, they
I'm not
have a
just saying,
Quran.
like, 18, 18,
they have
18.
a prophet. They have a lot of reasons. You know what I mean? They have biblical amounts
Okay, then
of
give me a
reasons.
better reason. That's why it's a debate.
I
Oh,
mean,
fuck.
I'm not ascribing to the Taliban's like.
I don't want to defend
I don't
that
actually
shit.
know.
Like, no one wants that.
I don't actually even know all the verses necessary to do that.
And
But,
no one wants
you
to
know,
defend it.
Right, like that would be like a fatiguing act. But the point is that it could be done, and it is done on a daily basis, and that's what the internet's become. And not just from the Taliban, but from people from Canada that are saying, "Hey, 16, bro, I drink beer, eh?" And so the idea that 19 in New Zealand or 18 or 21, my God, 18 and 21, the idea that you could be conscripted for war at 18 was the reason it was dropped to 18. Right? So your girlfriend, the only reason. Otherwise, it would be 21. The same reason alcohol was at 21 and that they dropped it to 18 during the Vietnam War and brought it back up. So the fact that things can change like that, I mean,
Actually,
it should show
technically
you-
17.
There you go. Based. I mean, drinking beer.
I did boot camp at 17. I mean,
Yeah.
Marijuana
So I
should
mean,
be
the fact that they can do that
restricted to the
before you
age
can
of-
vote.
Marijuana should be restricted to the age of 25 because the science shows that if you take it before the age of 25, it damages your brain.
Yeah,
Well,
but
what
the
I can
idea
be sure-
of a law being a guideline instead makes more sense. If you're like, you know what, your brain can be developed at 25. We recommend not taking this until 25. Instead of being like, hey, we found an 18-year-old kid in like the street who's selling drugs and we're going to arrest him for the rest of his life. So the other problem is the way that we enforce these laws. Because what are you going to do about somebody who's like in love? Let's say they're like 15 and 17, and they're like Mennonites and they get married. Are you telling me that's not okay? Because I disagree with you. I mean, as much as I think that it's wrong in almost every other circumstance, for whatever reason, right this second, I think that if a married couple, after, because they're not going to college and they're going to build a family and they've decided to do that, I feel like maybe if they're in love, that I don't understand it enough to say that we should prohibit Mennonites from getting married before the age that we think that we should, right?
Sounds like a Hallmark
honestly
movie,
don't.
to be honest.
Yeah, right? Like, it might be a freaking beautiful thing, and I don't know any better, right? But it's probably also abusive. But then again, like, what isn't? So I don't know. It's really hard for me to, like, completely say, oh, yeah, we got this. We have completely understood this. The age is 19, like New Zealand, or 17, or 18, right? That's not clear. But, like, I agree that it should be about maturity. I agree that it should be all these things. But then at that point, what you're really saying is that people in their mature phase of life, like 35, 45, etc., they should not be dating pubescent and chill. And I think everyone agrees with that. So it becomes kind of a weird fallacy of argument.
It's definitely a sticky situation.
That was the wrong adjective.
That was great. Moist. I like moist situation.
Slippery slope.
Seth,
Yeah.
we're like 3.5 hours deep almost, but I wanted.
Hey,
Seth
I'm
had
just
a
getting
monologue.
started. What do you guys?
Yeah,
talking
exactly. I know you had a monologue to give us. Like, you've been thinking about a lot of thoughts, so I wanted to bring you in for this chance, and maybe you can help us with your closeout.
Well,
you know?
I mean,
I'm so excited.
Yeah, I think every single policy, we need to remember that there are trade-offs. We need to be thinking about well-being. We need to be thinking about minimizing type 1 and type 2 errors. And these are all complicated things. So if you don't understand how the trade-offs are working, you should probably be a little bit more humble and not be trying to control policy if you're not understanding the harm that your policy is doing. If you don't understand why, if you don't understand why we should be doing trans affirming medical care before the age of 18, maybe you should cool it until you figure out both sides of the issue. And then maybe you'll start to realize.
Yeah, but dude, you're coming from the perspective. You're coming from the perspective that it's definitely it should be super young. Like, you're defending that position. Like, you're not talking about the science. Like, you're coming from it 18 is too late. Like, just be honest.
Excuse me.
I mean, we have a lot of other more important problems than Sri Lanka to worry about. We have to end apartheid for one, and slow down the nuclear arms race, and stop terrorism and world hunger. We have to provide food and shelter for the homeless, and oppose racial discrimination and promote civil rights. We, while also promoting equal rights for women, we have to encourage a return to traditional moral values. Most importantly, we have to promote a general social concern and less materialism in young people.
Yeah, that's a problem. You have Charlize Theron over there talking about
American Psycho.
Talking about how they need to educate, as a privileged white South African. She says she doesn't know a damn thing about South Africa. She hadn't been there in 2 decades, and she's going to go over there and teach them, and after they just went through apartheid in the 80s, which white people just totally devastated them. And now they're getting that in a circle where, the government's taking their farms now with most of a black majority in the government. I mean, they're still bringing in, it's still this cesspool, and it's just always different. It's just like you was talking about the driver's license earlier. I mean, yeah, if you're in the city, you need to be taking your test later. I mean, because you're in a way more responsible area. But if you're out on some country rural farm, yeah, go for it, And it's the same thing with that. Those kids, they got a lot. And even look back then, we didn't live as long, and you were a man, you had to grow up quicker. I mean, it's just a different situation. And the problem with today in our modern form of communication and travel, you have people going and speaking for other groups of people that have no experience with that group of people. They may be very smart and they may have good advice for other areas, and the people that are looking at their articles and watching that could relate to that person. But the people that actually need that education aren't going to relate to that education. They need somebody in their own clique, in their own type of thing to actually learn from. And that's the only problem I'm seeing with education in modern society today.
I've been thinking about it, like, and so my like dream of a perfect society is like I'm a kid holding a turkey leg and walking around the World's Fair, and everyone speaks a different language, and I realize that's basically the same metaphor or imagery as like just after the Tower of Babel falls.
Shit, you know, I never thought like that. Like, to me, like what a perfect society would look like. To me, a perfect society would look like a world where I do the least amount of damage possible, and then I don't, you know, I can't really control the world or shit. I can only control how I respond. I can only control myself. Like, so
But
I
the
never
world
really
should be
think-
full of like amusements, and I feel like the amusement park metaphor is good because walking around the World's Fair, there's like cotton candy, and people are innovating and they're inventing new things like chicken donuts, and you're able to try them, you know, and that's
Or should
cool.
be like Pokemon.
Yeah.
That's just a fetish of yours, Andreas.
That's fair. A perfect world fetish. Fetish just also like taboo. Fetish just means like a ritual, magical talisman for evoking change and realization of dream. Right?
Yeah.
Not a dirty thing. All these words that Puritans have made seem like dirty things. But no, Seth,
But-
continue.
Yeah, the number one thing I think
Secular
is
world
that
does too.
we as a society, as a planet, you know, we need to cultivate wisdom because there's a million complicated, tricky questions. All of them are nuanced, just like where do we put the thresholds for a million problems? Very complicated to calculate everything. Wisdom, I think, is how we navigate, right? We have to get all of the data. We have to try to have good epistemics to figure out the layout of the situation. And then we use wisdom to weigh the pros and cons in service of well-being, and we find that through line to cut through all of the issues and make society a better place.
Dang, I can't believe you guys sat with me for 3.5 hours. That's pretty based.
Hells yeah.
pretty
It was
cool.
a good time, man.
Oh, I thought we were doing 4 hours.
I know. I mean, if you really want, I guess we could. I wouldn't stop you. But I think what we could also do, because, you know, it's late, is tomorrow I'd like to get on with, we could do a second thing. Because I know, Seth, you've got a monologue. James, we could go even deeper. And
Yeah,
I
and I
don't
feel
know,
bad
but
for the audience. Like
a lot of people work and go to bed and like have families and things like that. That's the thing. But like, if that's cool, yeah, you guys want to do it again tomorrow?
Yeah, sure. I might be around for that.
Alright.
We should be cool to get.
Let's
I
get
always
Noel.
like hanging with Noel. Yeah,
See if we can do it.
It's, yeah, he's a good one.
I just feel bad because American Time Machine like has lamented all the hours he spent doing things he doesn't want to do. Kurt, is this something you wanted to do? Are you happy?
Yes. Yes. Normally we're done by 11, but this is cool too.
This is pretty based. I like that we did this. All right.
Yeah.
I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Oh, he's got a cat too. He's
Yeah,
got
dude.
a,
Yeah.
Oh, his cat's beautiful. Look at
Oh,
this
you
guy.
got a cat top, lap cat.
A lap
Damn.
cat.
Dude.
I also have
Oh.
a cat on my lap.
Yeah, we got an APM post with Kurt's
Am
got
I-
his cats. Chris has
am I
got
the-
his cats. Chris, you made that post. Yeah. I
I'm
think,
the only
James,
one who
you've
doesn't
got
have a
yours,
cat.
and I have mine in there.
I'm the only one without a cat, and I think it's
Cats
because
are
I am a
magical
cat.
animals, I think.
Yeah, I don't think a
channel-
single one of us have girlfriends. do we?
I got one.
Okay,
I'm
there you go.
divorced.
That's why I
dude.
gotta finish my show.
I got a daughter.
She
Girls
didn't
always
move
like-
from the spot the entire time.
All right. I'll see you guys later.
All right.
What's up,
fellas.
Brittany? Peace out.
Advanced philosophy means